Chapter 121. To make a person perish, you must first make them insane. Roger didn't directly eliminate these orcs from other timelines, but retreated first. Because attacking at this time would only eliminate a portion of the orcs, and Karaz and Garrosh, whom he had brought, would definitely escape. A temporary retreat could lure these two culprits deeper, then spring a trap. As for that drainer on the other side of the portal, Roger had no interest in it. His forces were insufficient to occupy it, and even if the dark portal led to the original Azeroth, it would just be a burden. The dark portal in Frostfire Ridge opened in Blade's Edge Canyon, and outside Blade's Edge Canyon was the Ogre's Fortress, Blade's Edge Fortress. When the dark portal first opened, the Blade's Edge Ogres, like the Highmaul Ogres, also sent troops to prevent demons from entering this world. However, without the help of the orcs, the Blade's Edge Ogres were already few in number and were no match for the endless demons. Soon, these Blade's Edge Ogres retreated back to Blade's Edge Fortress, defending the city. Relying on the solid Blade's Edge Fortress, the demons were never able to eliminate this ogre force. The Alliance's arrival did not launch an attack on Blade's Edge Fortress, because they didn't want any new enemies before eliminating the demons. Moreover, the environment of Frostfire Ridge was too harsh, and the Alliance had no intention of occupying it at all. Not to mention Frostfire Ridge, even Gorgrond, the Alliance had no intention of occupying. The Alliance only wanted to eliminate the demons and the Blackrock Or there, who told the Grond to be uncooperative. The Blade's Edge Ogres were different, they were very sensible and didn't provoke the Alliance at all. They couldn't even defeat the demons, so they were even more no match for the Alliance that defeated the demons. When the Alliance retreated, the Blade's Edge Ogres thought that the Alliance had defeated the demons and destroyed the Dark Portal, and retreated because they didn't want to live in the harsh Frostfire Ridge. So, they happily walked out of Blade's Edge Fortress, wanting to clean up the battlefield and get some corpses to eat. Ogres are very strange creatures, they eat everything, whether it's grass roots, bark, or dead corpses, as long as they can fill their stomachs. Their developed digestive system can even digest demon flesh full of fell energy. The Alliance's retreat meant that the remaining demon corpses on the battlefield were their best food. Soon, they found a large number of demon corpses. Just as they were transporting these corpses back to Blade's Edge Fortress, a large group of orcs rushed out. A charge wiped out these ogres. The orcs followed the ogres' tracks, found Blade's Edge Fortress, killed all the ogres, and occupied it. The two mysterious orcs also entered Blade's Edge Fortress with the Orcish army. After occupying an empty room, they revealed their faces: a brown-skinned orc and a yellow-skinned orc. Karaz was speechless. He felt that his education over the years had been a failure. Fortunately, Garrosh didn't completely ignore him. When Grommash brought in intelligence, Garrosh made tactical arrangements very seriously. Although the Alliance has retreated into Zungar Sea, they will re-enter Frostfire Ridge when they gather more soldiers. We must use Blade's Edge Fortress as a base to gather as many troops as possible. Garrosh pointed to the top of the mountain east of Blade's Edge Canyon, build a new camp here to prevent the Alliance from attacking suddenly. Leave this to the Thunderlord clan, they are familiar with everything in Frostfire Ridge, Grommash said. Garrosh nodded and continued, we can't wait for the Alliance to attack, so we must send out a commando army to catch them off guard while the Alliance hasn't gained a foothold. Let the Blackrock clan attack Gorgrond and occupy Blackrock Mountain. The Blackrock Ore there is an important strategic material and must be in our hands. The Warsong clan will attack Delator to the south, using our racial specialties to attack the enemy's weak points, so they can't concentrate their forces. The Bleeding Hollow clan and the Bone Chewer clan will attack Hellfire Peninsula to contain the enemy's forces. One order after another was passed down, and the entire Iron Horde began to move. Standing in the sky above Blade's Edge Fortress, watching the Orcish army advancing below, Karaz couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. No wonder Garrosh dared to be so arrogant. With such a powerful army, anyone would have a domineering feeling of having the world in their hands. He looked at Garrosh next to him. No wonder this guy always liked to stand at a high place. Garrosh didn't notice Karaz's gaze. He was fully focused on watching the army advance. Roger was strong, but he was just one person. Faced with such a powerful army, even a god would be afraid. None of the orcs noticed that in the high sky, an arcane eye was watching all the movements of the orcs. In the temporary camp in Zungar Sea, Kadger marked the orcs' new military routes. Turalion was a little surprised. It seems that this Iron Horde has a big appetite. That's right. Roger said, they are relying on their numbers and want to push us horizontally. Everyone's faces showed disdain. They had already passed the era of fighting with numbers. If Roger hadn't ordered a retreat, they would have blocked the dark portal and beaten the orcs violently. Turalion, give the order. Turalion nodded, pointed to the map and said, Lord Muaru, please take people to ambush at the entrance of Gorgrond. Treants and Dryads will help you ambush the orcs. Lord Velan, please take people to block the entrance of Blade's Edge Fortress, and the Alva will give you support at sea. Lord Ansu, please follow Roger to attack the dark portal. The rest of you, follow me to attack the orcs from the side and rear, and be sure to annihilate all these orcs. Everyone took orders one after another. They knew that if they fought this battle well, it would be the Alliance's last war. If they didn't fight this battle well, the Alliance would never have peace. Departure. Chapter 122. Just as the Blackrock clan was still trekking across the snowy plains, Miru had already led his army into the valleys of Gorgrond and set up defenses. When the Blackrock orcs stepped into the valley, they didn't notice anything unusual. The reckless Black Hand, carrying his warhammer, strode proudly at the front. In his mind, the Blackrock clan was advancing at lightning speed, and the Alliance wouldn't be prepared at all. He thought the Alliance was on the first floor, but little did he know they were already on the fifth. Suddenly, a bright light appeared ahead. The orcs stopped immediately, warily watching the front. Soon, they discovered the source of the light, a Naru. Otherwise, I'll show you the power of the Iron Horde. Miru swayed slightly, as if shaking his head, since you are unrepentant, then let's begin. Begin? Begin what? Confusion appeared in the orcs' small minds, but the next second, their doubts were dispelled. Countless roots emerged from the ground, trapping many orcs. The orcs immediately raised their weapons, wanting to rescue their companions. However, at that moment, the trees on both sides of the road uprooted themselves and transformed into towering treants. The orcs were caught completely off guard, and before they could react, the treants' attacks landed on them. Moreover, they were fatal attacks. The towering treants possessed immense strength, capable of holding their own even against the massive Gron. Faced with such overwhelming attacks, the orcs were undoubtedly killed. The battlefield was in chaos. Those orcs who weren't the treants' primary targets tried to use their agility to attack the treants. But vines shot out from the forest, entangling them. The orcs looked towards the forest and saw that there were a large number of wisps inside. These wisps used natural magic to control the roots and vines, assisting the treants. Faced with such a combination, the orcs could only passively take a beating. Only some powerful orcs could break free from the roots and vines on their own, the other orcs could only wait for their companions to rescue them. If their companions didn't rescue them in time, only death awaited them. Black Hand possessed incredible strength, and he easily broke free from the roots, raising his warhammer and charging towards a treant. But before he could get close, a flame descended from the sky, engulfing him. The flames frantically burned Black Hand's body, and soon he was reduced to ashes. Miru searched the sky for those powerful orcs and used holy fire to purify them. This was a one-sided massacre, and the orcs finally couldn't help but feel fear. They had the courage to face any enemy, but that enemy had to be one they could defeat. The Blackrock orcs began to flee. The Warsong, Bleeding Hollow, and Bone Chewer clans following behind felt inexplicable. Grom Mash even roared, ordering the Blackrock orcs to return to the battlefield. He killed more than a dozen deserters in a row, but couldn't stop the rout. What exactly happened? Grom Mash asked in confusion. No one answered him, all the orcs looked towards the valley. A rumbling sound came from the valley, the earth trembled, and towering treants appeared before their eyes, launching a charge towards them. Monsters! Damn it, these trees have come to life. The orcs asked questions one after another. Grom Mash reacted the fastest, oil. They're afraid of oil. Upon hearing this, the orcs quickly took out oil, lit it, and threw it at the treants. Just as the oil was about to land on the treants, a holy light shield appeared in front of the treants, deflecting the oil. The treants charged into the orcish ranks, swinging their fists left and right. Each swing took the life of an orc. Grom Mash finally understood what the Blackrock orcs had faced. He also didn't expect that the cooperation between the Naru and the treants would present such an overwhelming advantage. He frowned, knowing that they couldn't win if things continued this way. Therefore, he decisively issued a retreat order. Woo! A horn sounded from behind, and Grom Mash's expression changed drastically. If they were ambushed from both sides at this time, Garrosh's strategy would be a complete failure. But the development of things wasn't something Grommash could decide. Turalion led his army to charge the orcs from behind. Under the attack from both sides, the orcs lost all will to fight, and even Grommash was looking for a way to retreat. The paladins charged ahead, and Kadger led the mages to cast area of effect spells. Countless flames engulfed the orcs. Since the elemental spirits had recovered, the power of casting spells in Draenor had almost returned to normal levels. The orcs suffered a crushing defeat, and only a few orcs escaped into the snowy plains. But waiting for them would be griffin riders in pursuit, and it would be difficult for them to escape with their lives. In front of Bladefist Citadel, Velan led an army to block the road. Inside the fortress, Garrosh looked at Velan's sparse army and sneered, "Do you think such a small number of people can stop the Great Iron Horde?" Wishful thinking. He ordered the orcs, "Let our old friends see your power." The orcs charged out of Bladefist Citadel, shouting, "Kill all these Draenia!" Looking at the charging orcs, Dalas was fearless. He looked at the rangers beside him, "You can send the signal." The signal flare exploded in the sky, and the sea surface suddenly lit up. Countless beams of light shot out, directly ploughing through the road to Bladefist Citadel, and all the orcs who charged out of Bladefist Citadel were vaporized. All the orcs were dumbfounded, they had never seen such a powerful weapon. Garrosh looked at Karas Dormu in horror, "What is this weapon?" Karas Dormu shook his head. "Aren't you all knowing? Why don't you know?" Garrosh questioned. Karas Dormu's face darkened, and he turned around and said, "I will give you the answer." With that, he turned around and walked to the deepest room of Bladefist Citadel, turned back into his original form, and lay on the ground to enter the time ways. A trace of anger flashed across Garrosh's face, he felt that he had been deceived by Karas Dormu. The dark portal, 2 black dragons descended from the sky. Following closely behind was Anzu leading the Irako, carrying out indiscriminate bombing of the orcs in the air. Under countless spells, the orcs quickly fell into disarray. Rogers stood on the dark portal, waving the scepter of Sargeras to close the dark portal. Then, he turned his head to look at Bladefist Citadel and sneered, "Let's see where you run now." His whole body surged with the time divine authority, imprisoning the time ways. Karas Dormu, swimming in the time ways, suddenly felt his body stiffen. No matter how he mobilized the power of time, he could no longer make time flow. Everything around him came to a standstill, including himself. He didn't wait long before a figure appeared in front of him, and his body regained control. Rogers. Chapter 123. "I thought you were going to keep hiding." Roger curiously sized up Karas Dormu. "Is this eternal dragon form what you look like now?" "That's right." Karas Dormu said angrily, "I hate this body, it makes me lose my former sacredness." "Indeed." Roger nodded and said, "Dark, decaying, how did you become like this?" "Have you heard of the end time?" Karas Dormu asked. "End time?" Roger raised his eyebrows. He knew that the old gods used the lie of the end time to deceive the bronze dragons, causing them to fall. Karas Dormu said, "The end time is the end of time, everything will be annihilated, leaving only darkness." "And then?" Roger asked indifferently. "Don't you feel fear?" Karas Dormu asked in surprise. "What's there to be afraid of?" Roger asked back. "Everything will be destroyed, that is the end of the world." Karas Dormu was angered by Roger's words. He stood up and looked down at Roger, "You are also a person with the power of time, how can you turn a blind eye to the end time? When the end time comes, you, your wife, son, friends, relatives, including your power, ambition and influence, will all disappear. No one will even be able to prove that you existed in this world, and no one will remember your existence." Roger spread his hands, "So what? So what?" Karas Dormu completely couldn't understand, he looked at Roger suspiciously, not knowing how he could say such a thing. Just as he was thinking, the darkness and decay within him gradually took effect, and the idea of preventing the end time once again took the upper hand. Roger observed Karas Dormu's changes without moving. He felt the power of shadow from Karas Dormu, as well as an aura that disgusted him, the aura of the old gods. After contacting Anzu, Roger still has a certain understanding of shadow energy. Although normal shadow energy is dark, it does not have such severe decay and corruption. Didn't Tyrande become the Night Warrior in the game without falling? The moon goddess Elune also uses shadow energy and is still the only god recognized by Blizzard. So, Shadow energy is not the key. The corruption and decay within it are the old god's greatest means. Roger even suspects whether this corruption and decay are characteristics of shadow energy. The old god's setting comes from Thulhu, and the name Sethun is also derived from Thulhu. Later, in order to justify it, the setting of the Void Lords was added. However, after crossing into this world, many things have actually deviated from the setting. After all, the background setting is just a background setting, and it is much simpler than a complex world. Therefore, Roger only uses the background setting as a reference and will not treat it as dogma to be believed. You know, not long after he crossed over, the entire history was completely different from the background story he knew. Although everything now is very real, it is still a game world for Roger. So, he's not afraid of the end time. Just as he said, it's hard to say whether he can live to that time. Even if he can live to that time, Roger guarantees that with the speed at which his strength is growing, he will definitely have the ability to save his life. After all, that's just the end time of Azeroth, not the universe. Even if the universe ends, just rebuild one. Out with the old, in with the new. Roger is very straightforward. Karos Dormio didn't know Roger's true thoughts, he just wanted Roger to experience his despair. Since you are not afraid of the end time, I will let you experience it. Saying that, Karos Dormio mobilized all the power of time in his body, wanting to break Roger's time stop. How could Roger let him get his wish? He reached out and took out the dragon soul. Karos Dormio immediately collapsed on the ground, unable to mobilize any strength. Keep it away from me. Roger ignored Karos Dormio's roar, reached out his hand, slowly guided the power of time released by Karos Dormio to his side, and slowly integrated it into his body. Absorb time divinity, arcane master level increased, gain 10 skill points. Absorb time divinity, arcane master level increased, gain 10 skill points. What are you doing? Karos Dormio looked at Roger in horror. How can you absorb my power of time? Roger raised the dragon soul. There is Nas Dormio's power of time on this. You absorbed the power on the dragon soul. Karos Dormio was even more horrified. He previously thought that Roger was using the power of the dragon soul. Roger absorbed all the power of time before saying, I'm really puzzled, you have been using the power of time for tens of thousands of years, why is it still so superficial? What did you say? Karos Dormio stared at Roger and said angrily, put the dragon soul away, let's have a fight. Have you been hanging out with orcs for too long? Has your brain become dull? Roger mocked, the old gods wasted these methods on you for nothing. What nonsense are you talking about? Karos Dormio roared, but his roar was weak. Did I say something wrong? Didn't you see the end time? Roger waved his hand, let's see what the end time of this world is like. With a wave of his hand, time fast-forwarded rapidly. The last time I entered the time stream, it was you who tampered with me, right? Soon, time was pulled to the end. The entire Draenor world was plunged into a sea of fire, not the fire of the elements, but the lava fire of a planet's destruction. When a planet comes to an end, it will be this destiny. How is it? Is it the same as the end time you saw? Karos Dormio was stunned, how could this be? Of course it will be like this. Roger smiled, all planets will be like this, Draenor is like this, Azeroth is like this. Have you never gone to the end of time to take a look? I've seen it, the end of time is not like this. Karos Dormio struggled, he rushed towards Roger, Roger flashed away, Karos Dormio crashed out of the protection of time and fell into the lava. Watching Karos Dormio being swallowed by the lava, Roger said indifferently, this can be considered your best destination. Chapter 124. Roger emerged from the River of Time. The Alliance had already retreated from the Dark Portal and was advancing towards the Dota Fortress. Above the Dark Portal, there were still two black dragons, Big Black and Second Black, guarding Roger. Seeing Roger wake up, Big Black and Second Black stuck out their tongues and licked Roger's face like two dogs. Roger reached out and pushed away the two large heads, straddled Big Black's back, and lightly shook the reins. Big Black soared into the sky, with Second Black following closely behind. The two black dragons flew over the Dota Fortress and landed on its top. The orcs were completely trapped inside the Dota Fortress, and no matter where they tried to break through, they would be driven back. Turalion still wanted to persuade the orcs to surrender, his saintly heart was overflowing again. Clearly, the orcs were somewhat tempted, but Garrosh quickly suppressed them. Some orcs wanted to forcibly subdue Garrosh, but Garrosh strangled a powerful orc warrior with one hand, intimidating all the orcs. Garrosh threatened the orcs to defend the Dota fortress to the death, which made Turalion feel very annoyed. Just then, the black dragons descended. Roger took out a bomb from his magic pouch. This was a sample he had made while researching magic bomb creation, and he had been keeping it. Now, it was time to use it. Roger opened a portal and threw the magic bomb into it. Boom! A deafening explosion echoed within the Dota fortress, and the fortress instantly collapsed. The alliance quickly retreated, but the range of the explosion did not affect them, only smoke rushed over. Pa! The warriors spat out the dust in their mouths with some displeasure, but they dared not complain. Roger raised the scepter of Sargeras, and the power of earth elementals was poured into the ruins. The stones in the ruins began to move, forming earth elementals that launched an attack on the surviving orcs in the ruins. Ah! A furious roar came. Garrosh emerged from who knows where, stepping on the ruins. He jumped towards Roger, raised the Gorehowl in his hand, and slashed at Roger. Garona assassinated Grommash. The Gorehowl of that world was taken by Roger as a collectible and placed in the Black Temple. The Gorehowl of the distorted timeline of Karaz was still in Grommash's hands, and Grommash was still hiding in the snowy plains, evading Kurdran's pursuit. Who knows where Garrosh got the Gorehowl? However, that's not important. With a wave of his hand, Roger used Arcane Hand to grab Garrosh in mid-air. Garrosh struggled desperately, but he couldn't break free from Arcane Hand. Didn't Karaz teach you that mages are the darlings of the world? Garrosh didn't understand Roger's words, but he felt fear for the first time. He had realized Roger's power and remembered Karaz's warning, but it was too late. Crack, crack, crack. Arcane Hand slowly tightened, and Garrosh's bones were crushed and broken piece by piece, piercing into his flesh. Garrosh's body twisted and deformed, eventually turning into a lump of minced meat. Slaughtering a large number of orcs, your Orc Slayer title has been upgraded to Legendary. The Alliance retreated, leaving behind a lifeless Dota fortress. All enemies in Draenor had been eliminated, and the relationship between the Alliance became subtle. However, fortunately, Draenor had plenty of living space, and no problems would arise in the short term. This is also why the Book of Medivh can summon Archimonde, knowing that only the Well of Eternity can do that. This is what Roger learned after getting the Book of Medivh, but he didn't want to return to Azeroth at that time, so he returned it to Kadger, and by the time he figured it out, Roger estimated that he had solved the problem of the old god's whispers. As a result, Kadger didn't take good care of the Book of Medivh. Without the Book of Medivh, it would be difficult to open the dark portal relying solely on the skull of Gul'dan. The distance between Draenor and Azeroth is too far. Deathwing was able to reopen the dark portal with his powerful strength. Although Kadger is a genius, his strength is far from Deathwing's. Roger did not stop Kadger, because even Alleria wanted to return to Azeroth, to Kulthalas, where her family was. Therefore, Roger was also preparing to return to Azeroth. He first fulfilled his promise to the Broken, using divine power to extract the corruption of fell energy from their bodies, and then using the power of life to reshape their bodies, allowing them to transform back into Drania. However, they no longer wanted to return to Shatrath City. The way of the shaman made them close to nature. They chose to stay in Tuarim, chose to continue to serve Roger, and chose to repair the wounds of Draenor. Roger researched the corrupt aura in the black dragon's body and found a way to shield the whispers of the old gods. He removed the corrupt aura from the black dragon's body, and Big Black and Second Black regained control of the power of Earth. The power of Earth is different from the power of Earth elementals, it is closer to the power of the planet. He let Big Black and Second Black pour the power of Earth into the dragon's soul. Through the dragon's soul, Roger obtained a trace of Earth divinity, gathering all the power of the dragon aspects. For the rest of the time, Roger, in addition to absorbing the remaining power of the dragon's soul, spent time with Alleria and Artois. Time passed little by little, and Kadger was gradually approaching success. Finally, Kadger summoned a powerful arcane elemental. Relying on the arcane elemental's day and night supply of energy, he finally created a huge arcanite crystal. After the crystal was fully charged, Kadger guided the energy in the crystal through the skull of Gul'dan, reopening the dark portal. Turalion looked at the pitch-black dark portal. Kadger, are you sure this leads to Azeroth? Kadger was also a little hesitant. I did open it according to the method recorded in the Book of Medivh. But why is it like this? Turalion said speechlessly. Kadger was also a little unsure. He summoned an arcane eye and sent it into the dark portal. The scene fed back by the arcane eye was indeed the blasted lands. He even saw Netherguard keep in the distance. He showed the scene, and Turalion felt relieved. Since that's the case, let's prepare to go home. Chapter 125. At Watchkeep, Sislanen vigilantly looked south, quickly activating the arcane eye he had left there. What's wrong? General Lotuson asked, surprised, looking at him. Sislanen said heavily, the dark portal has opened. What? General Lotuson exclaimed. He quickly ran outside, shouting as he ran, everyone assemble. The garrison at Watchkeep were all elite knights of the Stormwind Kingdom. They donned their armor as quickly as possible and gathered in the square. General Lotuson directly ordered, move out. Target, the dark portal. Roger hadn't expected Kadger to succeed so quickly. According to the Warcraft timeline, it was now the 14th year after the dark portal first opened. Arthas had not yet become a paladin, Thrall was still in the arena, and Varian had just gotten married and had no children yet. This year was Roger's 11th year since transmigrating. He was 30 years old this year. Little Arto was almost 10 years old, and he had not yet seen what Azeroth looked like. However, the Alliance would not leave as soon as they said they would. Turalion could abandon Honorhold, and Kadger could abandon Kadger's keep, but Roger would not abandon his strongholds. The Black Temple, Sthek Halls, the Farallon Camp, the Evergrove Camp, the Broken, Treants, Dryads, and Elemental Spirits, without his protection, would be squeezed to the bottom of the Alliance until it became difficult to survive. Although it was bad to assume the worst of others, it was necessary to make the worst-case scenario. The Drania might not ostracize them, but the Araco definitely would. Even with Anzu's guarantee, Roger couldn't trust these mages who mainly used shadow energy. Talon King Ikis was still imprisoned in the shadow world. They were fully capable of rescuing Ikis, or even Tarok. But they didn't do it. Cess wasn't born a politician, but he was still capable of playing tricks and schemes. Moreover, mages had an extremely strong desire for possession. Just look at Medivaea's collection. Even Roger had collected a large pile of treasures in the Black Temple, even if he couldn't use them at all. Therefore, before leaving, Roger had to arrange things in Draenor properly. First, he strengthened the defensive forces of the Black Temple. While summoning the elemental spirits to repair the sky of Shadowmoon Valley, he also had them participate in guarding the Black Temple and protecting the farms near Ombolari village. Carla, as the governor of the Black Temple, managed everything. Tethressa was stationed on the Arto, patrolling around Shadowmoon Valley, assisting in the defense of Sthek Halls, Tuarem, Honorport, and other Azeroth Alliance strongholds. Dallas chose to stay behind as a representative of the Alliance. In fact, everyone knew that he had joined the Nara's Army of the Light and become a devout Nara believer. However, he was, after all, a high-ranking general of the Azeroth Alliance and a member of the Stromgarde royal family, so he certainly wouldn't watch the Alliance's strongholds be invaded. With him there, even if Cess wanted to play tricks, he would be wary of his and the Nara's threat. Of course, in addition to preventing the Draenor Alliance from breaking down, Dallas also had a mission, which was to keep an eye on those dark portals and prevent them from being opened again. The fleet led by the Demon Hunter patrolled around Draenor. On the one hand, they transported goods and exchanged what they had. On the other hand, they stood ready to support the garrison stationed near the dark portal. After all the arrangements were made, Roger and his family, along with the army eager to return home, came to the dark portal to meet with Kadger. What's going on? Roger frowned as he looked at the pitch-black dark portal. In the past, when the dark portal was opened, one could see the situation on the other side. Why couldn't he this time? He looked at Kadger. Did you use the wrong spell? How is that possible? Kadger immediately denied. He said somewhat displeased, I know you don't want to go back, but you don't have to find such a lame excuse. Although there were some problems, I can guarantee that it connects to Azeroth. As he spoke, Kadger displayed the scene observed by the arcane eye in front of everyone. Alyria also said, Kadger wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. It might just be that the arcane energy and the skull of Gul'dan are incompatible. All right. Roger shrugged. He didn't feel anything was wrong, indicating that there was no danger on the other side. Turalion, seeing that Roger had no objections, took the lead and walked towards the dark portal. Let's go home. 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 The soldiers couldn't help but cheer. Amidst the cheers of the soldiers, Turalion took the lead and stepped into the dark portal. Azeroth, Alliance soldiers nervously watched the dark portal. Ever since the dark portal suddenly opened half a month ago, it had been very quiet. Other than an arcane eye flying out to observe the situation, there had been no other anomalies. General Lotuson had already sent a messenger to Stormwind City to seek reinforcements. Before the reinforcements arrived, General Lotuson did not dare to act rashly. But now, ripples suddenly appeared in the dark portal, indicating that something was passing through the dark portal. Prepare for battle! General Lotuson ordered loudly. He raised his right hand as a signal. Once the dark portal released enemies, he would issue an attack order. A figure walked out of the dark portal. General Lotuson cried out in disbelief, Turalion. Turalion looked at the tense appearance of the crowd and couldn't help but ask with a smile, Lotuson, is this how you welcome old friends? The Alliance soldiers were also surprised. Ever since Kadger destroyed the dark portal, they had all thought that Turalion and the others had sacrificed themselves. They had even built statues of these heroes at the gate of Stormwind City. As a result, Turalion not only returned, but also looked unharmed, which couldn't help but make them feel excited. It really is you. Lotuson ran over and gave Turalion a hug. Of course, it's me. Hearing Turalion's affirmative answer, the Alliance soldiers erupted in huge cheers. Our hero has returned. Behind Turalion, one after another, the Alliance soldiers walked out, familiar soldiers embracing each other, happy that their friends were still alive. The mage Sislanen also expressed congratulations to Turalion, and then asked, General Turalion, what about Lady Windrunner? She's behind. Turalion said casually, and then began to chat with General Lotuson. The mage Sislanen looked towards the dark portal. Kadger led the Dalaran mages out, followed by the wild hammer dwarves led by Kurdran, and finally the elves. Seeing Aliria walking out holding a little boy's hand, Sislanen's expression was somewhat complicated. Aliria was a beauty recognized by the elves. It was a pity to marry a human. Chapter 126. Sislanen the mage quickly walked towards Aliria. Windrunner, it's so good to have you back. I'm also very happy to see you again, Sislanen. Aliria said with a smile. It's really great to see the elves of Azeroth again. Sislanen looked down at Arto. Madam, is this your child? That's right. Aliria said to Arto, this is Sislanen, say hello. Hello, Sislanen, I am Arto Kaishan. Hello, Arto, I am. Sislanen's face became strange, and he squeezed out a smile to finish the rest of his words, Sislanen. What's wrong? Aliria asked, puzzled. This child's surname is Kaishan. Sislanen asked uncertainly. Of course. A man's voice came, and another man walked out of the dark portal. He looked at Sislanen playfully, Sislanen, if his surname isn't Kaishan, what else could it be? Sislanen looked at the man in front of him in astonishment, with surprise, doubt, and confusion. Aliria said with a smile, Sislanen, don't you recognize him? He's Roger. Roger? Sislanen was still very puzzled, as if he really didn't recognize Roger. Roger thought he was joking and punched him on the shoulder. Buddy, are you trying to make me tell everyone about your embarrassing moments? Kadger raised the skull of Gul'dan to absorb the energy from the dark portal. Maintaining the dark portal requires a lot of energy, and the huge arcanite crystals of Draenor are not enough to support the dark portal for a long time, so Kadger temporarily closed it, and can also recover some energy to save time for the next opening. Wait! Roger shouted, but it was already too late. What's wrong? Kadger flashed over and asked, puzzled. Roger stared at Sislanen. You don't recognize me, do you? Sislanen took 2 steps back. He also felt something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. What exactly is going on? Kadger looked at Roger, then at Sislanen. Answer my question. Roger said in a deep voice. Sislanen nodded, I really don't know you, or even anyone named Kaishan. Turalion looked at Ledenson, who was also looking at him warily, and couldn't help but ask, old friend, what are you doing? Who exactly are you people? Ledenson asked in a deep voice, show your true colors, or we will attack. Turalion looked at Ledenson in bewilderment, what are you doing? Why are you suddenly hostile to us? Ledenson said coldly, if you really are Turalion, you should know why. Sislanen looked at Aliria, the husband of Windrunner is not Roger Kaishan, her husband is General Turalion. What? The allied soldiers were in an uproar, they looked at Roger, Aliria, and Turalion in disbelief. What's going on? Turalion subconsciously glanced at Alyria, and then said to Ledenson with embarrassment, "Sislanen, what nonsense are you talking about? I did pursue Windrunner, but we were not together." Alyria also looked at Sislanen angrily. "That's right, Sislanen, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation, I won't let you go today." Saying that, Alyria took out her bow and aimed it at Sislanen. She is loyal to love, how could she tolerate such blasphemy of love? Kadr and Kurdran felt like they were going crazy. What is all this? "Stop it!" Roger shouted in a low voice, but his voice was like a thunderclap, scaring everyone back a few steps. He turned to look at Kadr. "Kadr, when you cast the spell, you really didn't make a mistake?" "Of course." Kadr asked angrily, "You wouldn't attribute all of this to me, would you?" Roger glared at him. "It's obvious that this isn't our timeline, haven't you noticed yet?" "What?" Kadr was horrified. He turned to look at the Alliance soldiers, and all the answers were revealed. No wonder the Alliance soldiers don't know Roger, no wonder they would say that Alyria's husband is Turalion. It turns out that they didn't return to their original timeline. Maybe there is no Roger in this timeline, or Roger died early due to an accident. Without Roger, no one would compete with Turalion for Alyria, and Alyria would naturally choose Turalion, the handsome, talented, and promising commander of the Alliance. Everything is explained. The Allied soldiers were also dumbfounded. What's with the timeline again? 4 years ago, Karaz disrupted the timeline, opened the Dark Portal, and released the Iron Horde. They already knew about the timeline. However, with their knowledge, they simply couldn't understand this kind of existence, they just felt it was incredible. As a result, they themselves traveled through the timeline. The Alliance side was completely confused. What are they talking about? Kadr hurriedly explained to Sislanen and Ledenson, "Don't misunderstand, although I am not the Kadr on your timeline, I am still Kadr." "How awkward is this?" Sislanen frowned. Having not been exposed to the time domain, he also found it difficult to understand such things as timelines. Kadr could only explain it to him little by little. If he couldn't clarify this matter, I'm afraid they would have to fight each other. "What to do now?" Alyria asked in a low voice. "Don't worry, I'll explore our location first." After Roger finished speaking, he gently closed his eyes and entered the river of time. In an instant, he found that the timeline he was on was straight, and it was also the thickest of all timelines. "This is the main timeline?" Roger shifted his gaze, wanting to find their original timeline. But when he wanted to cross out of the main timeline, he was blocked. "Is there a bronze dragon at work?" Roger immediately took out the dragon soul, wanting to break the time barrier. But the rainbow light of the dragon soul could not harm the time barrier at all, and then he was pulled into a purple space, which was full of arcane energy flowing, and a faint voice sounded. "Roger, I need your help." Chapter 127. Looking at the statues of the 5 heroes in front of Stormwind City, Roger frowned slightly. Although he knew this was part of the main timeline, he still felt a little displeased. Turalion, on the other hand, was very satisfied and looked at Roger with a teasing expression. Although this Turalion wasn't him, he was content to have defeated his rival, even indirectly. Smack! A ball of arcane energy struck him on the forehead, interrupting his smugness. However, Turalion wasn't angry. Instead, he provocatively looked at the culprit Roger. "All right, you two, why are you acting like children?" Alyria looked at them speechlessly. Ever since they learned the truth, the two had been constantly at odds, and no one could dissuade them. Ordinary soldiers weren't qualified, and those who were qualified had their own reasons. Kadr was still feeling guilty about his mistake and didn't dare approach Roger at all. Kurdran was hopelessly carefree and would probably tease them instead of mediating. As for Dalaran, the only one who might have been able to mediate, he had stayed in Draenor and hadn't returned. Therefore, Alyria had no choice but to endure their childish behavior. However, it also showed that they both genuinely cared about her. Of course, Alyria sided with Roger and only had a comrade relationship with Turalion. Jonathan, riding a horse, waited outside Stormwind City. He looked at these familiar yet unfamiliar people with a particularly conflicted expression. It wasn't just him who was conflicted, the important figures within Stormwind City were also very troubled. They simply didn't know how to accommodate these people. Should they be settled in their original homes? That wasn't quite appropriate because their true selves were still fighting in the world of Draenor. If those people returned and saw identical versions of themselves, replacing their existence, what would they think? But to concentrate them in one place wasn't very wise either. The alliance had been established for so many years, and all the territories that could be divided had already been divided. There was simply no place to accommodate these outsiders. The 5 heroes followed Lord Lothering into Stormwind Keep. When Van Cleef built the new Stormwind City, he adopted some dwarven designs, hollowing out a portion of the mountain. The stones extracted were used to build Stormwind City. The hollowed-out area was built into a fortress to prevent Stormwind City from suffering another devastating disaster. Varian used this fortress as the new royal palace to save expenses. At the end of Stormwind Keep was the royal palace, where the now adult Varian was waiting with a group of ministers. He looked at the 5 heroes with a complex expression, unsure of what to do with these impostors. Both sides were a little awkward, and no one knew how to start the conversation. At this moment, a noblewoman stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the heroes must not have tasted the delicacies of their homeland for a long time." Varian immediately understood, "Indeed, let's put other matters aside for now. Servants, prepare fine wine and delicacies for our heroes." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Turalion thanked him on behalf of everyone. With the ice broken, the conversation became much easier. Everyone admired the noblewoman, and Alyria whispered, "This countess is very skilled, more outstanding than any elven noble I've ever met." Roger smiled and nodded, thinking, if you knew her true identity, you wouldn't say that. That's right, this countess was Onyxia. Seeing Onyxia, Roger missed Big Black and Little Black a little. To prevent them from being bewitched by Neltharion, Roger had left them in Draenor. While Turalion and Varian chatted, Onyxia, disguised as Katrana Prester, helped smooth things over, preventing the conversation from becoming awkward. Once the topic was exhausted, Onyxia would shift to the next topic, allowing the two to continue talking. If she wasn't the daughter of a black dragon, she could have become a great politician. The banquet was ready, and Varian invited everyone to take their seats. After a few drinks, everyone slowly lowered their guard, and they spoke more boldly. Some people were very curious about Roger. After all, this was the man who had stolen Turalion's wife. Varian was also very curious about Roger. He didn't know why, but he could always see a strange look in Roger's eyes. It was as if Roger was looking at his son. This feeling made Varian a little uncomfortable. "This is Mr. Rogers Kaisham, isn't it?" "That's right, it's me." Roger wasn't exactly treating Varian as a son, but seeing the Varian in front of him, he couldn't help but think of the Varian in the alternate timeline who was very dependent on him, and a little bit of genuine emotion was revealed. Varian said, "I know something about the others. Can you tell me your story? Does your Majesty really want to hear it?" Roger asked softly. Hearing Roger say this, everyone became even more interested and urged Roger to speak. Roger wasn't pretentious and slowly began to speak, "I was born into a military family in Lakeshire." Roger's words seemed to have a kind of charm, making everyone unable to help but listen. Even Onyxia listened attentively to Roger's story, without noticing anything amiss. Roger told some of the memories after he inherited the body, mainly about the war with the orcs. Following Roger's story, everyone seemed to return to that terrible war. When Roger spoke of King Lane's assassination, an angry expression appeared on Varian's face. When Roger spoke of Stormwind City being breached because of the desertion of noble private soldiers, the nobles showed ashamed expressions. When Roger said that he had 2 black dragons as mounts, a glint flashed in Onyxia's eyes. At this moment, she finally woke up. What was she doing? She had actually been engrossed in listening to a story. Realizing something was wrong, Onyxia couldn't help but observe Roger. Soon, she discovered a magical power emanating from Roger's body, and it was this power that made everyone listen so intently. Varian and the nobles didn't notice this at all, but all of this fell into the eyes of the 5 heroes. The other 4 subconsciously looked at Roger. Although Turalion was the nominal leader, Roger was the true core of the 5. Roger chuckled, turned to look at Onyxia, "Miss Black Dragon, if you had chosen to turn a blind eye just now, I wouldn't have exposed you." "What?" Varian was startled and regained his senses, looking at Roger vigilantly. "What did you just do?" The nobles also stood up one after another. Those with combat abilities stepped forward to protect Varian. Those without combat abilities hid behind the guards, seeking protection. Onyxia was horrified when her identity was exposed. The guards rushed up, wanting to kill Roger to silence him. "Don't even think about acting wildly in front of me." Turalion's whole body glowed with holy light, and he waved his hand fiercely. The powerful holy light pushed the guards away. In mid-air, a magical glow rippled from the guards' bodies, and when they fell to the ground, they had turned into a group of dragonmen. Monster! The nobles shouted in horror, scrambling to escape out of the dining hall. Varian was also a little dazed by this sudden change. He never expected that so many monsters would be hidden in his palace. He looked at the Countess in disbelief, only to see the Countess laugh loudly and transform into a huge black dragon, opening her mouth to spew dragon breath at Roger. Chapter 128 Onyxia. Roger called out the black dragon's name, and conveniently wrapped the dragon breath in an arcane barrier. You seem to have forgotten, I just said I have 2 black dragon mounts. Shut up! Onyxia flapped her wings, sending the Stormwind nobles and guards around her flying, and roared as she raised her body. Her head directly hit the ceiling, looking down at Roger. Don't compare me to those artificially matured wastes. Indeed. Roger nodded and said, you are not as obedient as Big Black and Little Black. You have angered me, mortal. Onyxia was exasperated. She took a deep breath. The moment the dragon soul was taken out, Onyxia trembled all over, and most of the power in her body disappeared. The dragon breath she had been charging for so long was actually not as powerful as the one she had just casually breathed out. How is this possible? Onyxia looked at the dragon soul in confusion. How could there be the power of the earth on it? Roger sighed, as if puzzled by Onyxia's low intelligence. Didn't I just say? I have 2 black dragon mounts. So, it's reasonable to let the black dragons infuse the power of the earth into the dragon soul, right? Although it's just a little bit, it's enough to give the dragon soul the power to restrain black dragons. In addition to the dragon soul's own powerful power, subduing Onyxia is also very reasonable, right? The dragon people still wanted to resist stubbornly, but Balver led the Stormwind generals to rush up and quickly solved them. Pulling the weapon out of the dragon people's bodies, Balver set his sights on the 5 heroes again. Turalion spread his hands and said, guys, don't be impulsive, we won't hurt you. Who hurts whom is not certain. Balver said coldly. The 5 heroes looked at each other and shrugged helplessly. They were not worried about the people of Stormwind at all, because their strength far exceeded them. Not to mention Roger, this pervert, Turalion, and Kadger both have strength close to demigods. Turalion had also listened to the holy light of the Naru, which gave him a deeper understanding of the holy light. While studying the books left by Medivh, Kadger also learned about the application of arcane magic by the Araco and Drania, and often learned about the latest spell concepts from the Black Temple. It was only a matter of time before the 2 became demigods, sooner or later. After Alyria had children, she spent more time on her family. However, being with Roger all year round, she benefited a lot from him. Roger gave her no less than 3 blessings of arcane, life, and time, and this passively growing power was not much less than that of Turalion and Kadger. The weakest one was of course Kurdran, but he was a wild-hammered dwarf, born with great power. If they really fought, he could last a long time with his amazing strength and strong defense. Therefore, even if the 5 heroes brought a burden, they could still break out of Stormwind. Of course, there was no need to do so at all, they did not intend to be enemies with the kingdom of Stormwind. Kadger said, Your Majesty Varian, Rogers just wanted to lure out the Black Dragon's guards. He discovered the identity of that countess when he came in. The reason why he waited until now to take action was to let the Countess call these Dragonman guards over so that he could wipe them out in one fell swoop. Everyone looked at Roger, they didn't quite believe that Roger could discover Onyxia's identity with just one glance. Roger tossed the dragon soul in his hand. This is the artifact of the dragons, with it I can sense her existence from a very far away. What is that? A noble asked. It's better for you not to know. Roger smiled playfully, controlled Onyxia with arcane energy, and put away the dragon soul. Kadger diverted the topic, Your Majesty, we need a place to house this black dragon. Varian said, there is an open space north of Stormwind. Away from the city, once she breaks free from the cage, it will affect Stormwind. Roger said. Varian frowned, if that's the case, why imprison this black dragon? Why not just kill her? Balver said at this time, in the mountains north of Stormwind, there is a valley that can be used as a place of settlement. Roger recalled that the mountains north of Stormwind were very large. Crossing the mountains would lead to the burning steppes, but because the peaks were too high, there were no mountain roads. It was concealed enough. Moreover, Roger could easily cross the peaks and reach the burning steppes. There were two mortal enemies of his there, one was Rend Black Hand, and the other was Ragnaros. Taking out the staff of Sargeras, Roger opened a portal and took Onyxia to the valley Balver mentioned. Not only was it high and cold here, but it was also the source of the Northshire River. The entire valley was divided into two by the river, and there was an open space near Stormwind, enough to house Onyxia. The others followed in, and Alyria took out a large amount of wood from her magic bag. Kadger used magic to piece the wood together and construct a huge cage. Roger finally took action, using the power of life to grow the cage into one piece, connecting it to the rock. Onyxia tried to break the cage with force, roaring angrily, and even wanted to spew dragon breath to burn the cage. However, a large number of anti-magic runes appeared on the cage, and the dragon breath was dissipated before it even approached the cage. Damn mortals, let me out! Don't waste your efforts, I have improved this cage many times. If it was so easy to break free, Big Black and Little Black would have run away long ago. Roger said while biting an apple. I said, don't compare me to those two artificially matured wastes. Onyxia roared in exasperation. Roger shrugged, indeed, there's no comparison, they are much more obedient than you. Onyxia shouted even louder in anger, and the people of Stormwind in the distance could hear the faint dragon roar. After the news of the Black Dragon's capture spread, Stormwind knew that there was such a valley imprisoning the Black Dragon, so they named it Black Dragon Valley. From then on, Black Dragon Valley became a place that Stormwind adventurers wanted to find. It's just that after many inquiries, they couldn't find out where Black Dragon Valley was. They only knew that to reach Black Dragon Valley, they needed to cross the mountains. Some adventurers who were not reconciled really wanted to cross the mountains, but most of them got lost in the mountains and eventually disappeared. Those who came back brought back news of the dead, they were all killed by falling off the cliff. Chapter 129. Roger temporarily settled down in Black Dragon Valley, but Turalion and the others were constantly looking for a chance to return to Lord Aaron. However, Lord Aaron was hesitant to accept them, as there was no way to accommodate them. After much deliberation, Terranaz and several kings reached an agreement to use the Kingdom of Alterax's territory in the mountains as a base for the Sons of Lothar. Turalion and the others were a bit puzzled, and Windrunner explained, Alterac betrayed the alliance during the war, allowing the Horde army to pass through and attack Lord Aaron. If Sir Lothar hadn't led his army back, Lord Aaron would have been captured by the Horde like Stormwind. Turalion and the others were stunned. They never imagined that the Kingdom of Alterac would do such a thing. Therefore, the Alliance army took over the Kingdom of Alterac, expelled King Aedan, and divided the land that originally belonged to the Kingdom of Alterac. Only Alterac City on the mountaintop was preserved and became a no-man's land. It is rumored that it is now occupied by ogres. So, we still need to take back our base from the ogres. Kurdrown said dissatisfied. Windrunner shrugged. In any case, the Sons of Lothar couldn't be without a place to stay, no matter how harsh the environment was. Turalion led the soldiers who were willing to go north to Alterac, while those who were unwilling stayed in Black Dragon Valley with Roger. Although more soldiers were willing to return to their homeland, it was no longer their homeland. Roger built a laboratory in Black Dragon Valley to study the old god corruption in Onyxia's body. Compared to Onyxia, the corruption in Big Black and Little Black was insignificant. Therefore, Roger had to take a cautious approach to the research, otherwise, everyone in Black Dragon Valley would suffer. However, with the experience of Big Black and Little Black, Roger quickly made progress. However, due to Onyxia's lack of cooperation, the progress was very slow. As a black dragon who had existed since the War of the Ancients, Onyxia had not been greatly affected by the old gods. She only listened to her father, Deathwing. However, her strength was great, and even a small amount of influence was more serious than that of Big Black and Little Black, the two young dragons. Because of this, Onyxia would not cooperate with Roger's research, let alone allow him to purify her. Arto could only follow Alyria to learn archery every day. He had inherited Alyria's archery talent well, and because he had been with Roger for many years, he inevitably received the nourishment of the power of life, making him much stronger than ordinary children. He could quickly hit targets beyond 100 yards, but the sense of accomplishment could not dilute the boredom of Black Dragon Valley. In order not to stifle his son, Roger often teleported the mother and son to Stormwind City. Soon, Arto had some friends in Stormwind City, and he would play with these friends every week. Today, Roger opened the portal, and Arto couldn't wait to rush in. He was ready to show off his masterpiece to his friends, a beautiful little bow that he made himself. But when he stepped out of the portal, he was stunned. Countless people were rushing towards the guards, setting fires everywhere, and shouting, "Give us back our wages." He recognized many of these people, and the uncle who was snatching the guard's weapon was his friend's father. Wasn't he a stonemason? Why was he attacking the guards? Arto. Alleria stepped out of the portal after him, looking at the chaos in Stormwind City in surprise. This is a riot? The Stonemasons Guild. Roger also stepped through the portal, his expression serious as he looked towards the palace. It seems those nobles didn't learn a lesson from my stories. Alleria asked, "What should we do? Should we send troops over to quell the riot?" Roger shook his head. "You take Arto back first. Today is a rare opportunity, and I want to teach these nobles a lesson." Just as she finished speaking, she realized that she and Arto had returned to Black Dragon Valley. Clearly, Roger didn't want to listen to her opinion. Stormwind Keep, the stonemasons who had seized weapons blocked the entrance and began to attack the palace guards. Varian frowned as he watched the chaos before him, never imagining that things would develop like this. Logically speaking, he should pay these stonemasons their wages, but he simply didn't have that much money. After Stormwind City was breached by the Horde, the royal family's property was seized by the Horde. Most of Stormwind City's property belonged to the nobles. Originally, these nobles promised to pay the Stonemasons Guild their wages after rebuilding Stormwind City, but these nobles went back on their word. Varian had no way to force the nobles to pay for the entire kingdom, because that was the king's responsibility. Queen Tiffin was shocked. She accompanied Varian to appease the stonemasons out of her duty as a wife. But she never expected to encounter such a disaster. "Tiffin!" Varian cried out. The stonemason was also stunned. They only wanted their wages back, they didn't want to kill anyone. Just at this critical moment, an arcane barrier appeared in front of Tiffin. The long sword hit the barrier and was bounced away. A figure appeared in mid-air, catching the long sword. "Enough!" A loud shout shocked everyone. "Roger!" Varian looked at Roger in astonishment. Wasn't he always staying in Black Dragon Valley? Roger casually threw away the longsword, grabbed the craftsmen who had broken through the guard's barrier, and threw them back. Then he crossed the guard's line and looked at the crowd. "The kingdom can't pay your wages, but it can pay you something else." "Something else?" The crowd looked at Roger in confusion, not knowing what he was talking about. Varian was also stunned. He didn't know what Roger meant either. Chapter 130. Roger waved his hand, and the image of the entire Stormwind City appeared in mid-air. "You built Stormwind City by accepting the kingdom's order, so there's no problem with the entire Stormwind City belonging to the kingdom, right?" The crowd nodded. Although they didn't know what the problem was, they still felt that what Roger said made a lot of sense. Roger continued, "In that case, the ownership of all the shops in Stormwind City also belongs to the kingdom. Now, since the kingdom can't pay your wages, taking out some shops as wages to offset them should be acceptable, right?" The stonemasons were immediately tempted when they heard this. The shops in Stormwind City were very valuable. If they could really own some shops, they could live very comfortably in Stormwind City just on the rent. "Are you trying to trick us?" a stonemason questioned. Roger said lightly, "Stormwind City has thousands of shops. Even if we take out 1/3 of them, it will be enough to pay your wages." Varian said softly, "Rogers, don't talk nonsense. Those shops belong to the nobles. I can't transfer them to the stonemasons." Roger turned his head, "Then do you have any way to solve the current predicament?" Varian shook his head in frustration when he heard this. "In that case, don't talk and let me handle it. If those nobles have any complaints, they will come to me." Roger waved his hand and said to the guards, "To prevent any more accidents with His Majesty the King and the Queen, you escort them back to the palace." He said to the stonemasons, "Now, I fully represent the Stormwind Kingdom to negotiate with you." "Who gave you the right to represent the Stormwind Kingdom?" The nobles rushed over, looking at Roger with exasperation. Roger looked at these nobles with amusement. They finally couldn't hide in the dark. They were still a little impatient. If these nobles were a little more shameless, they could completely deny the agreement signed by Roger after he had distributed the shops. In that case, the craftsmen would only hold Roger accountable. Unfortunately, they still valued those shops too much. The nobles stepped out of the crowd and questioned Roger, "Who gave you the right to distribute our shops?" "Your shops?" How much money did you spend to buy them? Roger asked back. The nobles' expressions froze, but they quickly said, we paid the wages of the craftsmen in advance, so these shops should belong to us. You paid the wages in advance? Then why haven't these craftsmen received them? Roger continued to ask. The craftsmen immediately clamored, yes. Why haven't we received them? How haven't you received them? We paid for the early construction money and the subsequent installments. A noble said angrily. Roger laughed, in that case, how much money did you pay? The nobles immediately shut up. They also have families to support. Now, many stonemasons can't even afford bread and can only support their families by working. As the biggest contributors to the reconstruction of Stormwind City, can they be balanced? Who would be balanced if it were them? It's good to have specific numbers. Roger said, Stormwind City, as the main city of the kingdom, is a gathering place for hundreds of thousands of humans. So the shops here are very valuable. The current market price is at least 30,000 to 50,000 gold coins. Of course, we can't calculate it according to the current price. We calculate it according to the time when Stormwind City was just built. Is it okay to say that each shop is worth 10,000 gold coins? The stonemasons nodded one after another. When Stormwind City was just built, the shops were almost at this price, and even the shops in the trade area were several times more expensive. Roger said, 3.4 million gold coins is 340 shops. Depending on the different areas, the price will also increase. The old city is based on 10,000 gold coins, and the craftsman area is calculated at 20,000 gold coins. The shops in the noble area, mage area, and trade area are calculated at 30,000 gold coins. He looked at the nobles, since you have already paid, then you can choose first. The nobles looked at each other. Some nobles said sadly, those are all our shops. Roger said coldly, you want to use 3.4 million gold coins to buy shops worth more than 50 million gold coins in the whole city. What a good deal. Never mind how much money we spent, we have the title deeds to these shops in our hands, these shops are ours. According to the laws of the Stormwind Kingdom, it is an illegal transaction to buy goods far exceeding their value at a low price. Everyone, do you want to take a trip to the prison? Roger waved his hand, and the guards next to him immediately stepped forward. Many of them sympathized with the stonemasons, but because they had no say, they couldn't do anything except sympathize. But now, Roger had sent them away to help, and they were very willing to send these shameful nobles to prison. The nobles became vigilant. They glared at the guards, you fools, dare to touch us. Humph! Roger knocked down the noble who made the threat with a casual blow, tie him up. The guards swarmed up and tied up the noble. Roger looked at the nobles, is there anyone else who dares to oppose the laws of the kingdom? The nobles were silent. Many of them were spellcasters. The moment Roger made his move, they felt Roger's powerful strength. Even when facing Archmage Antonidas, they didn't have this feeling. How strong is this guy? Roger looked at these nobles with disdain. They were a bunch of cowards who bullied the weak and feared the strong, and they were unlikely to achieve anything great. Since there is no objection, come over and sign the new agreement. The nobles could not resist. Under Roger's strong pressure, they could only bow their heads first and then try to take back their shops. The stonemasons cheered because they would also get hundreds of shops. In this way, the annual rent would be enough for them to live on. They could even resume their old business and continue to do engineering. You know, there are still many places in the kingdom that need to be rebuilt. Nightshire, Lakeshire, and many fortresses all need a large number of stonemasons. Chapter 131. The turmoil in Stormwind ended with the stonemasons' victory. Almost all the nobles hated Roger with a passion. If looks could kill, Roger would have died hundreds of times over. Varian went with the flow and implemented the policies Roger had laid out. With Roger attracting the hatred, Varian faced some resistance in his work, but it wasn't too significant. After things settled down, Varian issued some tax exemption policies to appease the nobles, temporarily dispelling their resentment towards him. As for Roger, after attracting a wave of hatred, he dusted himself off and returned to Black Dragon Valley. The nobles originally wanted to take action against Allyria, but they were all discovered by the vigilant Allyria. Having fought against demons in Draenor for many years, dealing with some human nobles was a piece of cake. In those years, the demons, in order to find Roger's weakness, sent assassins to kill her and Alto. Demon assassins were far more difficult to deal with than other assassins. They were rigorously trained by Kil'jaeden and could achieve complete stealth, making them impossible to detect for ordinary people. As a ranger, Alleria had keen intuition. Many enemies that Roger couldn't detect, she could sense. Thanks to this intuition, Alleria had exposed demon assassins more than a dozen times. And today, the keen Alleria discovered a strange bird, a raven. Black Dragon Valley is isolated by mountains, and almost no birds can fly here. Even if there were any, they would be large birds of prey like eagles and falcons. Ravens are scavengers, and although there are some creatures in the mountains, there is no carrion due to the high altitude and cold snow. With the raven's speed, it's impossible for it to fly to Black Dragon Valley without eating. Alleria took out her bow and arrow, aimed at the raven, and raised her hand to attack. A hand pressed down on her bow. This is an old friend. Alleria was puzzled. Turning her head to look at the raven again, it had already flown in front of them. Then, in a burst of green light, it transformed into a hooded human. A mage? The hooded man looked at Roger in surprise. I don't remember knowing you. Rogers, the Burning Legion is brewing a new conspiracy. Disaster is about to befall the Eastern Kingdoms. Only by going to the ancient continent of Kalimdor in the west can we win this war. Roger raised his hand to stop Medivh. I've dealt with the Burning Legion before and understand their methods very well. You're clearly being a bit alarmist. They won't succeed. Medivh was a little anxious. Rogers, I don't know if you resisted the Burning Legion in another timeline, but this time the Burning Legion's attack is extraordinary. They are brewing a global disaster. I've solved global disasters countless times. Roger pointed to Medivh's body. If I were you, I would hurry up and find a way to find a body. The soul state cannot last long. You've been able to persist until now because of your strength when you were alive. Thank you for your concern. I know how long I can survive. Medivh said lightly. He turned and walked outside. Since you don't believe my words, then be prepared to fight the demons. With that, he transformed into a raven and flew away. Alleria asked in confusion, Medivh is now in a soul state. That's right. Roger said with a bit of regret. When he was alive, he was controlled by demons. He had great strength, but in the end, he became an accomplice of the demons. Only after he died did he regain his sanity. He roams the void in a soul state, gaining insight into some of the Burning Legion's conspiracies. Therefore, after returning to Azeroth, he has been warning everyone, trying to raise people's awareness. Is what he said true? Alleria said in surprise. Then why didn't you listen to his advice? Roger smiled. His prediction is correct, but that's in a situation without me. Alleria gave Roger a strange look. He was a bit narcissistic. However, she liked it. Roger smiled triumphantly, then said seriously, this is also our mission in coming to the main timeline. However, before completing the mission, we need to gather strength. Alleria looked at the soldiers in Black Dragon Valley. There were indeed a bit few, only enough to launch a small war. Because they had to protect the Alliance's base, Roger left most of the Swords of Lothar members in Draenor. Only less than 20 Swords of Lothar members returned with them. Besides that, they were all ordinary soldiers, and they didn't even bring back many craftsmen. Fortunately, Roger understood the complete manufacturing process of the Apex's cannon and the Arcanite crystal. As long as there were sufficient resources and manpower, he could completely build a powerful army. Then what should we do? Alleria asked. Roger turned his gaze to Onyxia. I need to get a mount first. Alleria looked at him with a strange expression. She had seen Onyxia's human form. Did Roger want to get a mount, or did he want to ride her? It wasn't Alleria's fault for overthinking, but Roger often said strange things when they were doing embarrassing things. Who knew if he was just saying it, or if he really wanted to do it? Azeroth, as a world of multiple races, often had interspecies relationships. There were too many precedents. Seeing Alleria's expression, Roger couldn't help but give her a flick on the forehead. What are you thinking about? The old god corruption on Onyxia's body had been completely cleared, but she had not surrendered. She still believed that she was following her great father and did not think that Neltharion had fallen. Very naive. Originally, Roger wanted to give her some time, but now it seemed that time was a bit tight. Roger took out a magic leash and walked towards Onyxia. Onyxia roared angrily, Damn mortal, what do you want to do? Stay away from me. However, no matter how frightened she was, Roger still put the magic leash around her neck. Onyxia shook her head, trying to throw Roger off, but Roger held onto the leash tightly and wrestled with her. The two were at a stalemate. Onyxia believed that she could defeat Roger with the strength of a dragon. But she obviously hadn't considered that the larger the body, the greater the consumption. She struggled for most of the day, and finally, exhausted, she could only let the power of the magic leash penetrate her body. The contract on the magic leash gradually faded, gradually merging into her soul. Gradually, she gradually became one with the magic leash. Chapter 132. Onyxia looked at Roger unconvinced. Even as a mount, she disliked Roger. Roger didn't care if she was convinced or not. He said to Alleria, "You should return to Colthalas first to see your family." Alleria hesitated, "But, they don't consider me family." "You are a windrunner, aren't you?" Roger asked with a smile. Alleria smiled. She took Araltas and walked into the portal opened by Roger, returning to Colthalas. Closing the portal, Roger opened another portal, and said to the assembled soldiers, "We set out, destination, Black Rock Mountain." That's right, Roger's first target was Black Rock Mountain. Unlike the original alternate timeline, where the Alliance won a great victory and annihilated all the orcs entrenched in Black Rock Spire, and Roger even collapsed Black Rock Spire in anger, filling Black Rock depths and injuring Ragnaros. The main timeline still follows the game's background timeline, with Rend Blackhand leading the Black Rock orcs entrenched in Black Rock Spire. They were later bewitched by the Black Dragon Prince Nefarian and became Nefarian's lackeys. The Dark Iron Dwarves entrenched in Black Rock depths have always served Ragnaros, cooperating with the Black Rock orcs led by the Black Dragon to resist the Alliance's attacks, while also vying for territory with each other. Here, there are a large number of Dark Iron Dwarves. They are the best source of soldiers, and also very good craftsmen. Here, there are a large number of fire elementals. They are the best magic resource, and an important material for manufacturing Araco cannons. Moreover, he also has his old buddies here, the Black Rock orcs and Ragnaros. Of course, there is also Nefarian, who has many dragon eggs in his hands. Even if he can't hatch black dragons, he can hatch a large number of dragon spawn, which are also excellent sources of soldiers. More importantly, there is also a teleportation level piece of equipment here, the Hand of Ragnaros. Although Roger already has many legendary equipment, who wooed their artifacts being more. Moreover, the Hand of Ragnaros will have an important position in his plan. At the Scorched Outpost, the fire elementals were stunned when they saw the arriving allied soldiers, and then turned around and charged. Engage! Lothar's sword reacted first, with the Red Dragon squad taking the lead to meet the fire elementals. Other soldiers couldn't withstand the scorching of the fire elementals and could only attack from a distance. Fortunately, these soldiers had followed Roger for many years, and in addition to warrior skills, they also knew hunter and mage attack skills. Soon, under the leadership of the Red Dragon squad, they cleared a safe area. When Roger arrived riding Onyxia, the soldiers had already established a simple camp. Roger didn't drive straight in, but first eliminated the fire elementals of the Scorched Outpost, collecting a large number of spellcasting materials. He enchanted the soldiers' armor with fire resistance. Only with fire resistance could the soldiers fight in this place full of magma. While resting, Roger also sent people to scout the distribution of forces in Burning Steppes. In addition to Black Rock Mountain being the same as he had expected, Burning Steppes was more complicated than he had imagined. After years of recuperation, the Black Rock orcs were no longer huddled in Black Rock Spire. They occupied the ruins of the Dark Iron Dwarves Fortress and built Black Rock Fortress. To the south of Black Rock Fortress, there was also a Black Rock camp. The human forces had long been pushed to Redridge Mountains by the orcs, and the Stormwind Kingdom, which was still recuperating, had no ability to resist the attacks of the Black Rock orcs, and could only retreat steadily. In addition to the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Black Rock orcs, there were also Fire Gut Ogres. These were all potential enemies. After resting, Roger first attacked the Black Rock camp. When Roger appeared in the sky above the Black Rock camp riding Onyxia, the Black Rock orcs were stunned. They had heard that when Onyxia was captured in Stormwind City, Nefarian sent many assassins to Stormwind City to look for news, but only knew that Onyxia was being held in Black Dragon Lair. Over the past year, Nefarian had sent people to search for Black Dragon Lair many times, but to no avail. However, the Black Rock orcs never expected that Onyxia would become a human's mount. The allied soldiers took the opportunity to attack, with the Red Dragon squad leading the charge, catching the Black Rock orcs off guard. The Black Rock orcs reacted and wanted to resist. Roger disrupted their formation with an arcane explosion from afar, preventing them from organizing an effective counterattack. Seeing that the situation was not good, the orcs immediately chose to retreat. Roger sneered. Onyxia suddenly landed on the ground and swallowed the orc in one bite. Roger stood on Onyxia's head, looking coldly at the other orcs. Is there anyone else who doesn't want to live? It just so happens that my mount is a little hungry. The orcs were silent, looking at Roger as if they were looking at a demon. No. Even a demon was not as terrifying as Roger. The murderous aura released by the legendary Orc Slayer was enough to make the orcs feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Seeing that all the orcs were obedient, Roger waved his hand. The Red Dragon squad walked up with a look of disdain and took out collars to put on these orcs. As soon as the collars were put on, they immediately tightened, strangling the orcs so they could barely breathe. Roger then dispelled the magic, letting the orcs catch their breath. He said coldly, "Now your lives are in my hands. If you don't want to die, then work for me." The orcs were at a loss. They wanted to resist, but they were afraid of being fed to the Black Dragon by Roger. However, they didn't want to work for Roger either. The Red Dragon squad didn't care whether the orcs were in a dilemma or not, and directly drove them back to the Scorched Outpost. He needed to build a fortress at the Scorched Outpost, ready for a long-term battle. Whether it was the Black Rock orcs or the Dark Iron dwarves, their numbers were far greater than the allied forces. Roger had to develop little by little, because every soldier who followed him was a precious resource, not to mention that these were all his old subordinates who had been with him for a long time. He also had to prepare to take them back to the alternate timeline. He couldn't let them die in the main timeline. However, the news of Roger's attack on the Black Rock camp soon reached Nefarian's ears. Nefarian was furious when he heard that his sister had been made a mount. He gathered his army and headed towards the Scorched Outpost. The scout discovered the Black Rock orcs and immediately returned to report to Roger. After hearing this, Roger suddenly showed a treacherous smile. It seemed that his plan to lure the enemy out had worked. Soon, a shadow enveloped the Scorched Outpost. Nefarian looked at his sister in the camp and roared angrily, "Onyxia, you are truly a disgrace to our Black Dragon flight." Onyxia looked at Nefarian angrily, and suddenly turned her head to Roger and said, "If you capture him too, I will willingly be your mount." Chapter 133. Onyxia and Nefarian, though siblings, did not have a harmonious relationship. Nefarian always believed himself to be Netharian's heir. In the main timeline, Netharian faked his death, deceiving the Dragonflights and the Black Dragonflight. Therefore, he infiltrated Blackrock Spire and controlled the orcs. At the same time, he thought Onyxia's actions of lurking in Stormwind were superfluous. He felt she should spend that time hatching more whelps. Onyxia, likewise, despised Nefarian for being mindless, believing that creating strong enemies would only unite humanity further. The Second War was a prime example. How powerful was the Horde back then? Yet, they were still defeated by the Alliance. Therefore, if you want to defeat the Alliance, you can only start from the inside, disintegrate their alliance, alienate their citizens, and plunge them into civil strife. Only in this way can humans be defeated. Unfortunately, her plan was only halfway through when Roger captured her, and she humiliatingly became Roger's mount. She wanted to resist, she wanted to break free from her shackles. But all of this changed because of Nefarian's arrival. This bastard not only didn't save her, but even dared to regard her as a disgrace to the Black Dragons. "Damn bastard, I'll let you taste what it's like to be used as a mount." Thus, she spoke those words to Roger. Since she couldn't become better, she would make Nefarian become worse. Roger didn't expect such a pleasant surprise. He climbed onto Onyxia's back. "Since you hate him so much, let's go capture him." Onyxia grinned and soared into the sky, charging towards Nefarian. Nefarian, seeing his sister actually helping humans, was filled with anger. He roared and charged towards Onyxia. "Onyxia, you truly disappoint me." The two black dragons collided, tearing at each other in the sky. Claws tore at each other's skin, teeth aimed for each other's necks, and when they couldn't reach, they spat dragon breath. Both pairs of eyes seemed to be spitting fire, eager to kill each other. Nefarian was stronger, and he quickly gained the upper hand. He flipped over in the air, pressing Onyxia downwards. He wanted to crush this disgrace to the black dragons, and the human on her back. Onyxia struggled, but couldn't break free from Nefarian's suppression. At this moment, Roger poked his head out and said to Nefarian, "Got you." Nefarian frowned and sneered, "Mortal, what nonsense are you talking about, damn it?" Countless huge vines bound his body, with a force so great that even his wings were restrained. He shook his body, but the more he struggled, the tighter the vines became. He spewed dragon breath, but the more he did, the more vines grew. Soon, the vines' restraints made it impossible for him to exert any force. Onyxia took the opportunity to break free, flipping over and pinning him beneath her. Bang! With a loud noise, Nefarian crashed into the middle of the battlefield. The charging Blackrock orcs were startled and quickly stopped. Onyxia roared, looking triumphantly at Nefarian, "I got you, my dear brother." Nefarian screamed in terror, "Damn mortal, get it off me." Roger tightened the magic leash, pulling Nefarian's head down. Nefarian took the opportunity to spit dragon breath at Roger, but before it could get close, it was deflected. "Don't waste your energy." Onyxia sneered, "Our master is a powerful demigod. Even if father were alive, he would fear him. You should just obey, and you'll suffer less." Nefarian shouted angrily, "So what if he's a demigod? He's still just a mortal. I won't submit to a mortal like you. You have no choice." Onyxia watched triumphantly as magical energy continued to seep into Nefarian's body, believing that he would soon become a mount like her. Thinking about this, Onyxia didn't know why, but she felt a sense of satisfaction. Nefarian also felt the rapid intrusion of magical energy. Unwilling to accept this fate, he shouted, "Orcs, come and save me." The Blackrock orcs looked at each other, hesitant. Not all orcs were loyal to Nefarian, and not all orcs wanted to see Nefarian suffer. Some orcs charged towards Roger and Onyxia, wanting to rescue their master. However, before they could get close, the Red Dragon Squad teleported over and blocked their charge. The Red Dragon Squad fought 10 against 1, knocking down all the orcs who dared to approach. As they fought, the Red Dragon armor continued to emit flames, making them look like a group of fire people. The already hesitant orcs were now even less willing to step forward. But this didn't change their fate of being defeated. The allied soldiers drove the orc prisoners over, and for the sake of survival, the orc prisoners attacked their compatriots. The orcs were caught off guard, and the continuous changes left them at a loss. Soon, the orcs began to flee. The allied soldiers chased for a while and captured some prisoners. More than 1,000 elite orcs were captured, half of them. More importantly, their master Nefarian was also captured. Utter defeat could not even describe their losses. The allied forces drove the orc prisoners back to the camp and put collars on them. Under the effect of the collars, the allied soldiers skillfully brainwashed these orcs. Orcs are, after all, different. Roger never expected the orcs to obey him willingly. That's why he chose to control these orcs with collars, not only controlling their lives and deaths, but also brainwashing them, making them willing to die for him. Judging from today's results, the brainwashing effect is not bad. Adding today's captured orcs, Roger has already mastered more than 400 cannon fodder. Adding Nefarian, Roger can already launch a medium-scale battle. A few days later, the magic leash finally became one with Nefarian. After becoming a mount, Nefarian was very resistant, as untamed as a wild horse. But Roger didn't care. Wasn't Onyxia the same before? Now, hasn't she become obedient? Seeing Nefarian having the same fate as her, Onyxia was in a great mood, and she would provoke Nefarian whenever she had the chance. "My dear brother, don't waste your energy. You should know the principle of the magic leash. Just obey, and maybe the master will reward you with a fish to eat. Get out, don't talk to me." Nefarian said unhappily. How could Onyxia let him go? "I forgot, you don't like to eat fish, you." Chapter 134. Roger's actions in the burning steppes quickly attracted the attention of nearby forces. At Morgan's vigil, the Stormwind army was amazed by the combat power of Roger and the allied forces. They had never seen such a powerful army, except for the Paladin's troops. The Thorium Brotherhood, a group of dark iron dwarves, observed the changes in Searing Gorge and the burning steppes. After discovering what Roger was doing, they immediately gathered to discuss it. The Thorium Brotherhood were among the few righteous individuals among the Dark Iron Dwarves, and they had been working hard to rescue the Dark Iron Dwarves from Ragnaros. They funded any adventurers who dared to explore Searing Gorge and the Burning Steppes, as long as these adventurers could collect materials or investigate intelligence for them. Therefore, they quickly received the news of Roger's defeat of the orcs. The Thorium Brotherhood was curious about Roger's sudden rise, so they asked adventurers to collect information about Roger. Soon, Roger's detailed information was placed in front of the Thorium Brotherhood. After studying it, the Thorium Brotherhood was still puzzled. They couldn't quite understand the term timeline, but they were certain that Roger was powerful and might have a chance to help them rescue the Dark Iron Dwarves. So, they sent an envoy to the Scorched Ridge outpost to visit Roger. Roger was a little surprised. He didn't know much about the Thorium Brotherhood, only that they were good people among the Dark Iron Dwarves. It was just that after the formation of the Council of Three Hammers, they didn't seem special anymore. The deepest impression the Thorium Brotherhood gave Roger was that they could create Sulfuras, Hand of Ragnaros. Of course, Roger didn't need them to make the legendary hammer, so he didn't have many thoughts about the Thorium Brotherhood. Therefore, Roger was a little surprised that the Thorium Brotherhood took the initiative to come to him. Although these craftsmen were also very useful, it was not so easy to subdue them. Roger received the envoy of the Thorium Brotherhood, and as expected, the other party came to ask him to rescue the Dark Iron Dwarves. The Brotherhood can provide you with fire resistance equipment. After extorting them a few times, Roger shrugged helplessly, okay. Seeing that you are so sincere, it would seem stingy of me not to agree. The Thorium Brotherhood envoy didn't take Roger's words to heart. After many contacts with adventurers, he knew that if you want someone to do something, you have to pay a price. Therefore, in order to make Roger wholeheartedly help him, the envoy said, if you can obtain the essence of Ragnaros, we can help you forge a powerful artifact. Roger raised his eyebrows and deliberately asked, what artifact? A hammer of flame. The envoy tempted, we used to live in Blackrock depths, and we accidentally learned how to create weapons with the essence of flame. And the essence of Ragnaros's flame is the most powerful. As long as we can get its essence, the Brotherhood can use it to make an artifact. Okay. Roger showed an interested expression, if I get the essence of Ragnaros, I will definitely look for you. He changed the subject, but before that, we need a batch of sturdy armor with fire resistance. When my army is fully equipped, we will attack Blackrock Spire. The Thorium Brotherhood envoy had obviously anticipated Roger's conditions, we will send you the equipment you need as soon as possible. Every half-month, Roger received equipment. Roger was surprised by the generosity of the Thorium Brotherhood. How many materials did these Dark Iron Dwarves collect to provide nearly 1,000 sets of thorium equipment in such a short period of time? The Thorium Brotherhood even specially sent Roger a set of elementium equipment, allowing Roger to see their boldness. Having received the equipment, Roger naturally had to work. He drove the orcs to sneak into Blackrock Spire, and then cooperated from the inside out, occupying part of the Blackrock Spire area. If Rend Blackhand hadn't reacted quickly, Roger could have completely occupied Blackrock Spire. Rend Blackhand did not completely succumb to Nefarian. Although he was bewitched by Nefarian's magic, he was still sober at times. After Nefarian was captured, Rend Blackhand regained control of Blackrock Spire. He was also recalling the days when he was controlled by Nefarian, and felt particularly ashamed. As a man determined to become Warkif, being controlled by a black dragon was simply a black history. So Rend Blackhand worked hard to make Blackrock Spire heavily defended, so that he was not wiped out by Roger in one fell swoop. But those rebellious orcs still made him unbelievable. When did so many traitors appear among the tough orcs? After occupying a part of Blackrock Spire, Roger began to infiltrate Blackrock Spire and Blackrock Depths. Every day, he would capture some prisoners. The orcs would be directly brainwashed with collars, and the Dark Iron Dwarves would be sent to the Thorium Brotherhood. The orcs and Dark Iron Dwarves were also trying to cope with Roger's plan. However, they didn't have many options. Roger had orc spies, but Rend Blackhand didn't. He could only shrink his defenses and screen his subordinates to avoid being captured. Roger had a red dragon squad that could sneak into Blackrock Depths. Emperor Dagron Thorasan was now completely immersed in the gentle embrace. A few years ago, Magni Bronzebeard's daughter, Moira, went to explore near Blackrock Mountain and accidentally met Emperor Dagron Thorasan. The two fell in love at first sight. Moira broke with her father for this and insisted on marrying Emperor Dagron Thorasan. Emperor Dagron Thorasan was also very good to Moira, and even gave up his ambitions, just wanting to live a small life with Moira. It was just that he still had Ragnaros above him, and many things were beyond his control. Therefore, he had to send people to investigate the kidnapping of the Dark Iron Dwarves, lest Ragnaros be angered by it. The Dark Iron Dwarves had nowhere else to go. If Ragnaros was angry and buried the Dark Iron Depths, they would only have a dead end. He sent out many spies, wanting to find out Roger's details. But these spies would soon be sent to Roger. Roger did not send these spies to the Thorium Brotherhood, because they were different from ordinary Dark Iron Dwarves. They were combat units and were very good sources of troops. Roger put collars on them like he did with the orcs. After brainwashing, Roger sent them back to the Dark Iron Depths to kidnap more Dark Iron Dwarves for him. In this way, Black Rock Spire and Black Rock Depths gradually became places for Roger to shear wool. As the wool shearing progressed, Roger's troops became more and more numerous. Chapter 135. Roger caused quite a stir in the burning steppes, attracting attention from all sides. The nobles of Stormwind began to attack Roger, saying that his power was growing, and that he was also recruiting orcs and black dragons, and might take the opportunity to attack Stormwind. With Roger's strength, plus the black dragons and orc army, Stormwind had no power to contend with him. Varian was also deeply worried. Although Roger had helped him, he had to suspect Roger's motives. Stormwind had just been rebuilt, and the kingdom's finances were exhausted, making it impossible to recruit too many soldiers. Rend Blackhand took advantage of this opportunity to unite with the Dark Iron Dwarves and break out of Black Rock Spire, occupying most of the burning steppes and launching an attack on Redridge Mountains. At first, the alliance supported Stormwind with some money, but later, as the investment in the orc containment camps grew larger and larger, Gilneas and Kulthalas withdrew from the alliance one after another, and the alliance no longer had any extra money to help. Later, Terranaz flaunted his political skills and annexed a large amount of the Barav family's land, which aroused the dissatisfaction of other kingdoms, who believed that Lord Aaron was taking all the benefits for itself and were even more unwilling to take money out. Lord Aaron itself could not support the consumption of the orc containment camps, and could only constantly demand money from various countries. As Terranaz's most loyal supporter, Stormwind had to contribute money to it. Under such circumstances, if Roger really drove the orcs to attack the Kingdom of Stormwind, the Kingdom of Stormwind would have no resistance. When dealing with orcs, Varian could rely on the paladins, but the strength of the paladins was not worth mentioning in front of Roger. Faced with this emerging force, Varian had no means of counteracting it. How could this not make Varian feel worried? Although he did not make any explicit reaction, Varian had already become wary of Roger in his heart. Compared to Stormwind, Ironforge was not so anxious. Magni Bronzebeard personally led an army to Blackrock Mountain to meet Roger. Long time no see. Roger was very happy to see his old friend. But Magni Bronzebeard was not happy. Rogers, I know you may know me from another timeline, but I don't know you very well. I'm here this time to ask for your help. My daughter Moira has been captured by the Dark Iron Dwarves, and I want to ask you to help me rescue her. Roger's expression was a little strange. Magni still didn't know, or rather, was unwilling to admit that his daughter had fallen in love with Thorisan. Of course, he wouldn't expose Magni. I can really help a little, Roger said. The Thorium Brotherhood has provided us with some fire resistance armor, and I can give you some. Then, I can help you block the fire elementals of Molten Core. You should be able to deal with the Dark Iron Dwarves yourselves, right? Magni nodded, of course. Although we are unwilling to kill our own kind, if the Dark Iron Dwarves dare to kidnap Moira, I will definitely make them pay the price. Since that's the case, let's discuss the plan of action. Roger did not directly drive the orcs to attack, as these orcs had more important uses. Therefore, he chose to cooperate with Magni, and also wanted to bring in the Thorium Brotherhood. Although the Thorium Brotherhood was not good at war, the Dark Iron Dwarf prisoners in their hands were very familiar with the Black Abyss and Molten Core, which would add to the next operation. After planning, Roger had Onyxia lead the Dragonmen to help the Sword of Lothar defend Blackrock Spire. He and Magni led the army into Blackrock Depths together. In order to give the army stronger combat power, he cast a temporary blessing of life on everyone. The Red Dragon squad broke through the Dark Iron Dwarf defenses as a spearhead, and the Bronzebeard Dwarves took the opportunity to rush into Blackrock Depths. The Dark Iron Dwarves were no match for the Allied forces and were defeated. Soon, the Dark Iron Dwarf warlocks came to reinforce, summoning a large number of fire elementals to withstand the Allied forces' attack. Leave these fire elementals to me. Roger said, reaching out, an arcane hand grabbed all the fire elementals in his hand, and with a sudden grip, the fire elementals turned into a sky full of sparks. Magni took the opportunity to kill among the warlocks, and a thunderclap knocked down a group of warlocks. The Bronzebeard Dwarves took the opportunity to rush up and kill these warlocks. The Bronzebeard dwarves' hatred for the Dark Iron dwarves had been long-standing. They had not destroyed the Dark Iron dwarves before because of Ragnaros, and now that they had the opportunity to attack, they were even more ruthless than the orcs. Roger didn't want to get involved in the dwarves' civil war. Magni, I'll leave this to you. I'm going to Molten Core. Okay. Magni killed the last warlock and led the army to continue down. At the entrance to Molten Core, a team of fire elemental creatures was walking out. Roger had the Red Dragon squad defend from behind, and he faced the group of fire elemental creatures alone. Raising his hand, he cast a barrage of arcane missiles. This simplest arcane spell directly pierced the bodies of the fire elementals, easily defeating them. Those fire elemental creatures were not so easy to collapse because they had physical bodies. But they still could not escape the fate of death, and they were even more miserable than the fire elementals, with countless holes pierced in their bodies. Magni led his army to capture 2 military camps and an armory, and the Bronzebeard dwarves began to attack, manipulating the machinery built by the Dark Iron dwarves. The Dark Iron dwarves suffered the consequences of their own actions and were badly defeated. Soon, the Bronzebeard dwarves attacked the Emperor's seat. Stop it! Moira looked at her father angrily. She didn't expect her father to break into Shadowforge City and kill so many of her husband's compatriots. Moira, I'm here to save you. Magni said. Moira looked at Magni angrily, holding her big belly. I voluntarily married Thorisan and don't need you to save me. Magni pointed at Thorisan angrily with his warhammer. Moira, is he forcing you to say this? Thorisan walked to Moira's side. Although we have grudges between us, Magni, that cannot stop the love between me and Moira. Over the years, I have been restraining the Dark Iron dwarves. Why do you want to start a war? Magni looked at Thorisan coldly. Boy, you are as insidious as your parents. They were the ones who started the War of the Three Hammers back then, and now you are provoking the relationship between our father and daughter. I want to kill you. Saying that, Magni rushed towards Thorisan, wanting to get rid of this culprit. But Moira stood in front of Thorisan. She looked at Magni coldly. If you want to kill him, then kill me first. Magni angrily threw his warhammer on the ground. You are really driving me crazy. Chapter 136. Magni was not an adventurer, he wouldn't kill Thorisan in front of his daughter. Under Moira's protection, Thorisan's life was spared. However, Magni did not withdraw his troops. He reached a cooperation with the Thorium Brotherhood, imprisoning Thorisan and Moira in the Emperor's seat. The two forces jointly controlled Black Forge. After completing all of this, Magni led his men to clear out the remaining Black Iron dwarves who were still resisting. After capturing all the hostile Black Iron dwarves, he reinforced Roger. Arriving at the entrance to Molten Core, Magni saw Roger using the small cave to kill wave after wave of fire elementals, drawing fire elemental energy from their corpses and channeling it into a strange crystal. What are you doing? Collecting energy. Roger said with a smile, I'm preparing to create a powerful weapon, and these crystals are for charging that weapon. Oh. Mentioning weapons, Magni became interested. What weapon? Would you mind telling me about it? No problem, but I have to wait until I've collected enough energy. Before long, the fire elementals sensed something was wrong. They sent some fire elementals up from the Iron Anvil in Black Forge, discovering that the Black Iron dwarves had been defeated, and stopped sending fire elementals into Black Rock depths. After setting up a defensive line, Roger and Magni headed to the military factory. Roger explained the design and function of the Apex's cannon, and Magni's eyes lit up. We designed a powerful steel weapon with the gnomes a tank. If we install the Apex's cannon on the tank, perhaps it could make the tank even more powerful. Your idea is good. Roger couldn't help but give Magni a thumbs up. People who are proficient in design are just clever. Because gunpowder was not mature enough, the tanks built by the dwarves did not have much offensive power and could mostly only be used as mobile walls. Because the cannons that could generate power were very large and could not be installed on tanks. The mortars used by the dwarves could be installed, but they were not powerful enough, so they were also abandoned. The Apex's cannon was not only lightweight but also powerful, making it a perfect cannon for tanks. If the two were successfully combined, the newly manufactured tank would become the king of war. If an army of tanks could be formed, let alone the Scourge, even the Burning Legion would be crushed. So, the two gathered craftsmen, spent a few days designing blueprints, and then spent more than half a month creating a prototype. The body of this prototype was made of strong black iron. The Thorium Brotherhood's craftsmen spent a lot of effort creating the mold to cast the body. Magni personally crafted the treads, adding a lot of thorium to make the treads hard and elastic. Roger led people to build the cannon and personally set up the monoconduction circuit. After installing the treads, setting up the cannon, and filling it with arcanite crystals, the test driver entered the tank, and under everyone's attention, the tank slowly started moving. Abandoning steam power and switching to magic power greatly increased the tank's speed. The test driver was an excellent tanker, and after the test drive, he liked it very much. It's great, not to mention the speed is fast, but the turning is stable, it can completely replace our existing tanks. Receiving the test driver's praise, Roger, Magni, and the craftsmen were invigorated. However, this was not the end of the test drive. After all, the attack power had not been tested. To avoid collapsing Black Forge, Roger placed the attack power test on the open space under Blackrock Mountain. It took some time to build a shooting range, and then Roger used levitate to get the tank outside. It was still the same tanker testing. He drove the tank straight down the mountain. Although the mountain road was rugged, the tank was still very stable. Black iron has a higher density than ordinary steel, and the body made of black iron has a lower center of gravity, so it is difficult to roll over. Rushing to the shooting range, the tanker locked onto a target while moving at high speed, and then pressed the attack button. Boom! The cannon fired a beam of light, blasting the target into pieces. Wow! The tanker screamed. The cannon's attack power surprised him very much. This also made him fall in love with the new tank. He quickly pulled the control lever, driving the tank to rampage and constantly firing. In less than a minute, more than 100 targets set up in the shooting range were all destroyed. Either blasted to pieces by the cannon or crushed by the tank. The tank stopped. The test driver opened the lid, looking at his masterpiece, extremely excited. Oh my god! I absolutely love it! Roger and Magni began to inspect the new tank. The body is intact, there are no problems. The crystal consumption is relatively serious, it seems that the body is too heavy, exceeding our expectations. Can you find a way to increase the crystal reserves? It should be possible. Roger said, in fact, just keep a cockpit, and the reserved space can be expanded into an energy compartment. This way, at least more blocks of arcanite crystals can be placed. Magni nodded, okay. Magic power is indeed better than steam power, I'll modify the mold. The two also picked out some minor problems, and then quickly improved the second version. Although it was a little slow, it meant that the craftsman could produce the Apex's tank without Roger and Magni. Next, as long as the production speed increases, an Apex's tank army will quickly form. By then, all enemies of the Allied forces will tremble before the steel torrent. However, the armory soon faced a serious problem: a shortage of arcanite crystals. Roger turned his attention to Molten Core. It seems that the plan can only be brought forward. Originally, Roger wanted to completely occupy Blackrock Spire before advancing into Molten Core. But the lack of energy made him change his mind. Roger did not enter from the entrance of Molten Core, but jumped down from the Iron Anvil. After many days of observation, the fire elementals were very concerned about the entrance, but not enough about the Iron Anvil. Or rather, because the Iron Anvil was an open area, it was difficult to defend. After Roger's surprise attack, the fire elementals were caught off guard. Chapter 137. The fire elementals and lava elementals looked at Roger, the uninvited guest, in surprise. None of them had expected anyone to dare enter the Molten Core seeking death. However, they hadn't seen an outsider for who knows how many years. Now that one had come seeking death, they were happy to play with this intruder. Just as these elemental creatures rushed towards Roger, eager to set him ablaze, Roger didn't even glance at them, and a powerful surge of arcane energy swept outwards. Boom! Arcane explosion. The fire elementals directly collapsed, leaving only their elemental bracelets, the tools they used to condense into physical form. The lava elementals turned into pools of lava, quickly cooling into stone. Adhering to the principle of not wasting anything, Roger took out an arcanite crystal charging device and placed it near the corpses. After the device was activated, it automatically collected the surrounding fire element to charge the arcanite crystal. Mortal, how dare you invade the territory of the Lord of Fire? A tall fire elemental, leading a group of lackeys, floated over aggressively. Kill him, let him know the consequences of offending the Lord of Fire. The fire elementals quickly charged towards Roger, only to turn into ashes in the arcane explosion. Roger indifferently took out the charging device and threw it on the ground. In his eyes, these fire elementals were nothing more than a pile of energy. Even the tall fire elemental before him was no different, except that it had more energy. Damn mortal, you dare steal the energy of the Lord of Fire! The fire elemental roared, casting flame strike at Roger, trying to kill him with this extreme burning. Roger gently raised his hand, and a mana shield blocked the flame's attack. He walked out of the flames, and threw a counterspell at the fire elemental. Puff! A large number of sparks burst from the fire elemental's body, and its body began to sway. Damn it, how could you counter my spell? The fire elemental asked in confusion. Roger said as he walked, interrupting elemental spell casting is indeed difficult, but as long as you cut off the connection between you and the spell, you can form a counter. The fire elemental's confusion was not resolved. But, you even caused me to suffer the backlash of the spell. That is indeed more difficult. Roger explained, but as long as you master the spirit of the elements, you can easily do this. Spirit of the elements? The fire elemental trembled violently, as if reflecting its violently fluctuating heart. Who exactly are you? Roger's kiss churn. As Roger spoke his name to the fire elemental, he used arcane magic to create a barrier, enclosing the fire elemental within it. Arcane energy surged through the barrier towards the fire elemental, transforming into thin needles that pierced into the fire elemental's body, then frantically extracting the fire elemental's energy and guiding it into the charging device. Mortal, you are desecrating the Lord of Fire. Roger teased, after listening to you talk about the Lord of Fire for so long, why doesn't your Lord of Fire come to save you? Don't try to sow discord. Gar will not be fooled. Gar. Roger became interested when he heard the fire elemental's name. He looked at Gar with interest, wondering if Gar had that item with him. He condensed an arcane hand and plunged it into Gar's body, and sure enough, he touched a hard object. Gar's expression changed drastically. Stop! Don't touch it! But how could Roger listen to him? He forcefully pulled the hard object out of Gar's body. Ah! Gar screamed miserably, and his body dissipated. This made charging easier, and the charging device accelerated the extraction of Gar's energy. In just a few seconds, it completely filled an arcanite crystal. Roger replaced it with another crystal, and then examined the item in his hand. Killed Fire Elemental Lord Baron Gar, Fire Elemental affinity increased, Fire resistance increased. Roger still focused his gaze on the half of the imprisoned skull in his hand, completely ignoring the second strange system prompt. Killing a Fire Elemental Lord could actually increase Fire Elemental affinity and resistance, which was completely illogical. But Roger was already mentally prepared and didn't find it strange at all. In fact, he even thought it made sense. If I remember correctly, the other half should be in Shazra's hands, right? Roger raised his head, looked towards the passage on his left, and strode over. Along the way, there were still a large number of fire elementals and magma elementals. While killing these elementals, Roger extracted the fire elemental energy from their bodies to charge the crystals. Soon, he arrived at a hall filled with wandering magma elementals. Among the magma elementals, there were scattered fire elementals called flame imps and a huge ancient core hound. In the middle of the hall, a group of tall magma elementals, the fire walkers, guarded an even larger magma elemental. It was Shazra. When Roger appeared in the hall, he immediately triggered the fire elemental's alarm. Shazra led the fire walkers, pushed aside the nearby fire elemental creatures, and came to a spot not far from Roger. Outlander, this is not a place you should be. Roger shrugged, a fire elemental named Gar just said the same thing. When Shazra heard this, he immediately felt that something was wrong. If Baron Gar had encountered this human, he would have killed him. However, this human seemed unharmed, so Baron Gar was probably in dire straits. His strength was comparable to Baron Gar's, otherwise, Ragnaros would not have divided Thunderon's imprisoned skull into two and sealed them in their bodies. Quick! Kill him! Shazra ordered the fire elemental creatures to attack. But what greeted them was a surge of powerful arcane energy. Arcane explosion! Roger used the same trick again. But whether it was the flame imps or the ancient core hounds, they all perished in the arcane explosion. Their seemingly powerful strength was not worth mentioning in front of Roger. Roger calmly took out the charging device and threw it into the corpses, then walked towards Shazra. Shazra was terrified. Although the flame imps and ancient core hounds were no match for him and the fire walkers, they were not creatures that could be killed instantly by just anyone, not even Ragnaros could do that. Roger did not give Shazra and the fire walkers time to think. The arcane hand plunged into Shazra's body. Only then did Shazra realize Roger's purpose. He anxiously shouted to the fire walkers, "Quick, stop him! If he succeeds, the Lord of Fire will not spare any of us." The fire walkers immediately attacked Roger, but Roger annihilated this group of fire walkers with just a few arcane explosions. "Now it's just us left." With that, Roger began rummaging through Shazra's body. Chapter 138. Gar had no stomach, so he didn't know what the feeling of churning seas was like. But to be rummaged through inside his body by a human like this, Gar felt immense shame. He roared, "Outsider, mortal! You!" Roger looked with satisfaction at the left half of the bindings of the Windseeker in his hand. It was complete. Acquired bindings of the Windseeker, left. Killed Lava Elemental Lord Gar, Fire Elemental affinity increased, Fire Elemental resistance increased. Gar's roar stopped abruptly, and he slowly turned into a pool of lava. While waiting for the recharge, Roger studied the bindings of the Windseeker in his hand. He had already combined the two halves of the bindings of the Windseeker, but it showed no sign of releasing Thunderon. Could something be wrong? Roger cast arcane brilliance on himself and began looking for a way to release Thunderon. With his powerful spell comprehension and the effect of inspiration, it didn't take long for Roger to find the reason. It turned out that Ragnaros, in order to prevent Thunderon's resurrection, not only split the bindings of the Windseeker in two with a spell, but also placed a lock on it. The key was a powerful essence of flame, so powerful that only Ragnaros himself could condense it. According to the plan, only Ragnaros himself could open the bindings of the Windseeker and release Thunderon. This was Ragnaros's back door, waiting until he was strong enough to release Thunderon and obtain his power. In the game, players did indeed do this. Only after completing Molten Core and killing Ragnaros to obtain the essence of the Fire Lord could they summon Thunderon. But that was just in the game. Players could kill Ragnaros over and over again. In reality, killing Ragnaros was as difficult as ascending to heaven, and it was impossible to achieve. Thunderon roared to the sky, "Ragnaros, you despicable villain!" Then, it rushed towards Roger, raising the Wind's Kiss blade to attack Roger. The wind was like a knife, as if to cut Roger's body open. The lightning was like an arrow, as if to pierce Roger's heart with 10,000 arrows. "Are you blind?" Roger wanted to ask, but he didn't have time to speak, and the wind and thunder had already submerged him. If Roger hadn't acted quickly and put on a mana shield in advance, he would have been torn to pieces by the wind and lightning and turned into charcoal. Roger was not one to sit still and wait for death. He blinked behind Thunderon, and the arcane hand slammed hard on Thunderon's back. Arcane energy invaded Thunderon's body, making it irritable. Swish crack! Thunderon waved the Wind's Kiss blade and attacked Roger again. But Roger had expected this and easily avoided Thunderon's attack. It must be said that Thunderon the Windseeker's strength was very powerful. No wonder it could suppress Ragnaros. If Ragnaros hadn't used tricks, Thunderon would not have fallen from grace and watched Ragnaros seal it, suppressing it forever. In this way, Ragnaros stole Thunderon's title of First Elemental Lord. Thunderon, who had lost part of his power, still had the energy to kill Roger instantly, which made Roger vigilant. Roger had never thought that he was already a demigod, yet his life would still be in danger. With each attack, Roger carefully dodged and then found an opportunity to immediately launch an attack on it. Countless arcane energies were poured into Thunderon's body. Originally, Thunderon's strength was weakened, and it was still delirious. Now its attacks gradually weakened. It no longer had the strength to attack, but tried its best to drive out the arcane energy in its body. Although arcane energy can derive earth, water, wind, and fire, the 5 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire cannot be transformed into arcane. It was impossible for a wind elemental to drive arcane. Soon, Thunderon's body gradually became smaller, and the Wind's Kiss blade also became smaller. When Thunderon's body had shrunk to a certain extent, Roger suddenly launched an attack. Arcane Barrage was fired into Thunderon's body without restraint. The Divine Arcane Barrage scattered Thunderon's few remaining powers and directly defeated it. Just as Roger wanted to pick up the Wind's Kiss blade, Thunderon's phantom appeared in front of Roger. "Thank you for freeing me from Ragnaros's imprisonment, but I am now unable to avenge Ragnaros. I hope you can fulfill my last wish, and I will allow you to use the Wine's Kiss blade. Roger shook his head. The Wine's Kiss blade was already in his hands, so why did he need permission? Thinking this, Roger picked up the Wine's Kiss blade from the ground, but a bolt of lightning flashed out from the Wine's Kiss blade, hitting Roger's hand, and most of his palm was charred. Damn! Thunderon had actually tampered with the Wine's Kiss blade. Killed Prince Thunderon the Windseeker, Wind Elemental affinity increased, Wind Elemental resistance increased, Arcane Master level increased by 2, obtained 30 skill points, gained the Wine's Kiss blade's recognition. Arcane Master had long entered a period of difficult leveling, and Roger had not leveled up for a long time. Now, leveling up 2 levels at once was simply a windfall. That's not all, 30 skill points were definitely a big gift. Although he couldn't use them temporarily, saving them until level 100 to upgrade skills to the mythical level required a lot of skill points. The Wine's Kiss blade's recognition allowed Roger to instantly control the Wine's Kiss blade. The charred palm that had just been burned gradually returned to its original color under the baptism of lightning. Lightning constantly baptized Roger's body, and Roger clearly felt his changes. Experienced the baptism of thunder's power, Wind Elemental affinity increased, Wind Elemental resistance increased. When all the lightning returned to the Wine's Kiss blade, Roger felt his changes well. Thunderon's soul gradually dissipated, and it left the last sentence, "May you have a beautiful love." Roger was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "I already have it." He used the system to rename the Wine's Kiss blade. Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker. Chapter 139. As the most stylish weapon in the game, the Windseeker blade was once a symbol of the server's top player. Its power is beyond doubt, but to make it truly powerful, there's one more step, activating the wind elemental energy within. Roger didn't need to go through the trouble like players did. He didn't even have to run to Silithus to summon Thunder Fury, so activation was even less of a problem. He drew upon the wind elemental energy remaining in Thunder Fury's corpse and poured it into the Windseeker blade. After a burst of thunder, the Windseeker blade was awakened and activated. The power of wind and lightning swirled around the blade, making it look exceptionally cool. Compared to the anti-magic sword, which was also an orange weapon, the Windseeker blade was far superior. Roger tried to invoke the power of wind and lightning, and immediately a wild wind danced across the sky, with lightning mixed in, its power far surpassing that of the anti-magic sword. It's like the art styles are completely different. The anti-magic sword has a World of Warcraft style, while the Windseeker blade looks like a divine artifact from a domestically produced trashy online game that you can only buy by spending money. Not only is the design cool, but the special effects are even more awesome. The powerful wind element attracted the attention of the fire element creatures throughout Molten Core, and they rushed towards this place, following the aura of the wind element. As a result, they saw this scene of raging wind and thunder, which evoked ancient memories in them. Kill these wind elementals. Fire Lord Kianaz commanded the fire element creatures to charge into the thunderstorm. Although it had not experienced that ancient event, it knew of Fire Lord Ragnaros's hatred for the wind element. No matter what the reason for the appearance of so many wind elements, it had to kill them all. When the fire element creatures rushed into the thunderstorm, the ubiquitous thunder immediately tore them to pieces. How is this possible? Kianaz was puzzled. It had to be known that Molten Core was the territory of the fire element, and the wind element would be severely weakened here. However, this thunderstorm not only looked powerful, but its power also exceeded its imagination, as if the environmental influence of Molten Core simply didn't exist. Crack! A bolt of lightning shot out from the thunderstorm, knocking Kianaz to the ground. Kianaz twitched all over. It wanted to escape, but the electricity paralyzed its body, making it impossible to move, even to blink. He casually thrust the Windseeker blade into Kianaz's head. Killed Fire Lord Kianaz, fire element affinity increased, fire element resistance increased. Another boss, another few crystals to charge. Roger skillfully took out the charging device and turned to look at the new batch of fire elementals rushing over. Were these guys so eager to die? What if all the fire elementals in Molten Core ran over? With a casual flick of the Windseeker blade, lightning shot out, killing the fire elementals. Wuju's swordsman level increased. Is this forcing me to go back to being a warrior? Roger was a little speechless. He thought that killing fire elementals with the Windseeker blade's energy would accumulate mage experience. Soon, as batch after batch of fire elementals fell, the Wuju's swordsman's level actually increased to level 65, and over 100 Arcanite crystals had been fully charged. How many bosses have I killed? If he remembered correctly, it seemed to be 8, plus old 9 coming to his death. Not all fire elementals are idiots after all. Roger collected all the crystals, summoned Nefarian, and headed towards the depths of Molten Core. The manager, Excutus, was located in the center of Molten Core, and he was ordered by Ragnaros to manage Molten Core. Now that Molten Core had been slaughtered by Roger, he immediately reported to Ragnaros. Ragnaros's phantom appeared in front of Excutus. After listening to Excutus's description, Ragnaros was furious. What did you say? Someone actually released Thunder Fury and obtained his wind-kissed blade. Master, I saw the wind-kissed blade with my own eyes. That human relied on the power of the wind-kissed blade and used lightning to kill all the fire elementals. I am the only one left in Molten Core. Start the ritual, I will personally kill that human who dares to steal my power. Excutus quickly began the summoning ritual. When Roger was about to find him, the ritual was completed. As soon as Ragnaros appeared, countless flames raged around him, directly burning Nefarian to ashes. After returning to the Mount Space, Nefarian was still terrified. Was that figure Ragnaros? It was simply too terrifying. He had never thought that he would have a day to save his life by borrowing the magic rains, but it was undeniable that if it weren't for the magic rains, he would have died just now. He was even a little worried about Roger. If Roger was burned to death, he might become the mount of some fire elemental. He had obviously forgotten that if it weren't for Roger, he wouldn't have had to face Ragnaros at all. Flames swept through the entire Molten Core, and then spewed out from black rock depths and the entrance to Molten Core. The powerful fire dragon directly destroyed the defense line built by the Alliance, burning many Alliance soldiers to death. If most of the Alliance soldiers hadn't been on both sides of the wall, the entire Alliance might have been wiped out by Ragnaros's entrance flame special effect. Roger used a mana shield to block the invasion of the flames, and with a casual wave of the Windseeker blade, the wind drove the flames away from him. He walked towards Ragnaros step by step. You are the human who dares to steal my power. Ragnaros looked down at Roger, raised the fire hammer, and smashed it towards Roger. Die! Boom! The fire hammer smashed to the ground, and the flames surged wildly. If Roger had been hit, he would definitely have died beyond recognition. Unfortunately, Roger had already used Gale Step to leave the attack range of the fire hammer. He rushed to Ragnaros's side, and the Windseeker blade condensed a powerful lightning bolt, striking Ragnaros. A flash of fire appeared on Ragnaros's body, and a powerful flame impacted all around. The flame hit Roger, breaking through the mana shield, and touching the anti-magic armor on his body, directly annihilating the most primitive elements. Hey! Ragnaros looked at Roger in confusion. He didn't expect that Roger could directly annihilate the flames. Of course, Roger didn't have this ability. Although he was a demigod, arcane divinity was, after all, arcane divinity, not fire divinity, and he couldn't control the flames. The mana shield played a major role, offsetting most of the impact of the flames. Then there was Roger's powerful fire resistance, which allowed him to withstand the attack of the flames. Finally, it was the anti-magic armor that dissociated the flames into the most primitive elements, making it look like annihilation. Ragnaros raised his hand, and countless magma emerged from the ground, vowing to engulf Roger. Chapter 140. The entire Molten Core was covered in lava, leaving Roger with nowhere to step. However, he remained calm, directly blinked to Exarchus's mountain, used Arcane Hand to grab its neck, and forced it to float above the lava. Ragnaros angrily hurled the Hammer of Sulfuron, directly smashing Exarchus to death. Roger blinked into the air and cast Levitate on himself. He looked at Exarchus's corpse with regret. What a waste of a mount. Ragnaros roared, "Damn mortal!" Countless flames erupted from the lava, rushing towards Roger in the air. However, before the flames could reach Roger, he used the heat from the lava to leave his original position. The flames transformed into fire dragons and pursued him. Roger weaved and dodged in the air, using blink whenever he couldn't avoid them. Moreover, he continuously attacked Ragnaros with the Thunder Fury sword. Although each strike was insignificant to Ragnaros, the accumulated damage gradually took its toll. Ragnaros had absorbed much of Thunderon's power, which was originally under Ragnaros's control. However, after being struck by the Thunder Fury sword's lightning, these wind elemental powers seemed to awaken, wanting to break free from Ragnaros's control and return to the Thunder Fury sword. How could Ragnaros relinquish these wind elements? This would not only weaken him but also strengthen Roger. However, as more and more wind elements were awakened, Ragnaros's control began to fail. The wind elements began to detach from Ragnaros's body, surging into the Thunder Fury sword. Ragnaros's size began to shrink, and the Thunder Fury sword's power grew stronger. With this ebb and flow, Ragnaros couldn't help but feel terrified. He knew he couldn't delay any longer, otherwise, he would be worn to death by Roger. Thinking of this, Ragnaros recalled the hammer of Sulfuron and slammed it hard on the ground. Countless flames rose from the lava, surging towards Roger from all directions. Faced with this all-encompassing attack, Roger finally couldn't dodge. He immediately cast a mana shield on himself and then blinked directly behind Ragnaros. He leaped high, using gravity to jump towards Ragnaros, and plunged the Thunder Fury sword into its body. Rumble! Countless lightning bolts rampaged within Ragnaros's body, constantly tearing at it. Ragnaros's body was, after all, elemental and not as stable as a flesh and blood body. Under the violent lightning attacks, the struck areas immediately turned into balls of flame, blasting Roger away. Roger fell into the lava, instantly activating Flame Body. The Grandmaster level Flame Body still couldn't survive in the lava. Roger used the remaining skill points to upgrade Flame Body to the legendary level, and the lava was no longer a threat to Roger. He blinked again, activated Gale Steps in mid-air, and crashed into that wound. Ragnaros was extremely surprised. He hadn't expected Roger to dare enter his body. He knew that the flames within his body were hotter than lava and could burn any living being to death. However, Roger not only entered but also thrived. He infused arcane energy into the Thunder Fury sword, which, through the sword's conversion, formed a violent lightning storm. Gales and lightning continuously tore at Ragnaros's body, and Ragnaros howled in pain. He could no longer maintain his body. Countless flames poured out of the places broken by lightning, and Ragnaros's power grew weaker and weaker. Damn mortal! I won't spare you! After leaving behind a harsh threat, Ragnaros's body collapsed and was banished back to the elemental plane. The elements of Azeroth are very similar to demons. Demons can only be killed in the twisting nether, and elements can only be destroyed in the elemental plane. Roger only destroyed Ragnaros's projection, and even that took a great deal of effort. If he faced the real Ragnaros, Roger would have no way to win. Killed Fire Lord Ragnaros, fire affinity increased, fire resistance increased, obtained Fire Divinity. Fire Divinity? Roger was a little surprised. This reward was somewhat unexpected. He knew that even Ragnaros hadn't mastered much Fire Divinity. If Roger mastered Fire Divinity, he could completely enter the Fire Elemental plane and completely kill Ragnaros. However, seeing extremely weak in the status bar, Roger abandoned this unrealistic idea. He began to collect the remaining essence of the Fire Lord from Ragnaros because it was an important material for crafting the Hand of Ragnaros. As for the other material, it was the Hammer of Sulfuron left behind by Ragnaros. This Hammer of Sulfuron was mostly forged from black iron ore, but it also contained a large number of rare ores, such as thorium, elementium ore, and so on. As Roger collected the essence of the Fire Lord, he unexpectedly discovered that the Fire Divinity was increasing little by little. It seemed that this essence of the Fire Lord was the embodiment of Fire Divinity. Roger suddenly felt sorry for those players. After they killed Ragnaros, they gave the essence of the Fire Lord to that elf, which was a huge loss. As the Fire Divinity continued to increase, the Blade Master Yi actually began to level up again, stopping only at level 70. Moreover, his flame body actually improved to the mythic level. This was his first mythic level skill. Moreover, as the Fire Divinity continued to increase, the power of Flame Body also increased. If he continued to enhance Fire Divinity like this, he might be able to sweep across Azeroth with just Flame Body. Roger finished collecting all the essence of the Fire Lord and then put away the Hammer of Sulfuron. He glanced at the molten core, which was full of magma, and thought that perhaps he could build a permanent crystal charging device here. That way, he wouldn't lack power for the Apex's tank in the future. A steel torrent was just around the corner. Thinking of doing it, Roger created a huge charging device and then connected it to the outside, placing hundreds of crystals for charging. At the current rate, a batch of crystals could be replaced every 2 days. After finishing, Roger walked out of the molten core. The Red Dragon squad saw Roger come out and ran over quickly. "Your Excellency, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Roger shook his head, looking at the mess on the ground. Was this what Ragnaros had done? The Red Dragon squad said, "Powerful flames erupted just now, and we lost dozens of orcs." Lost is lost. Roger didn't care about the lives of the orcs. He told the Red Dragon squad about the Molten Core's ability to charge crystals and asked them to replace the crystals every 2 days before going to find Magni. Chapter 141. Magni was also leading the Thorium Brotherhood in modifying the Apex's tank. Dwarves love to pursue high firepower, so they wanted to see if they could increase the caliber of the Apex's cannon. Although the number of Arconite crystals was still small, once the crystal production increased, increasing the caliber would be inevitable. Roger deeply agreed with this because, besides him, no one could foresee what kind of enemies Azeroth would encounter. Not everyone possessed the strength of a demigod. Those ordinary people, relying on their mortal bodies, simply couldn't withstand those powerful demons and ancient evils. Therefore, developing technology and relying on external forces was the only way for the Alliance to cope. However, the Apex's cannon was the crystallization of the Arako's wisdom over thousands of years, and it was by no means something that could be improved overnight. Although Magni and the Thorium Brotherhood were both clever craftsmen, compared to the Drania craftsmen, they were still inferior in terms of knowledge and ideas. Perhaps, only some gnome craftsmen could surpass the Drania craftsmen in talent and wisdom. Therefore, Roger felt that they should still stick to their old profession. He took out the Firestone hammer. "Everyone, I have a better project here." Magni watched as the Thorium Brotherhood directly abandoned the improvement work on the Apex's cannon, and could only shake his head helplessly. "I told you, it's better to find some gnomes. After all, specialization is key. You should focus on forging," Roger said, pointing to the Firestone hammer. "Look, I've brought you so many materials, you have to help me forge a sword, right? You still lack a sword." Magni said with a smile, "Your black dragon sword is a dragon-forged blade, I can't forge such equipment. And that flame blade is also a fine longsword. The person who forged it is very skilled." Roger spread out his hands. "The black dragon sword is indeed good, but it can only be used against humanoid creatures. If the size is too large, the black dragon sword won't work. Although Sankas can use the power of fire, the amplification is too small, and it's already obsolete for me." Magni nodded, "All right. But you need to tell me what kind of longsword you want, so I can design the blueprints. Just follow this design." Roger took out the Thunder Fury, blessed blade of the Windseeker, and Magni exclaimed in surprise, "What kind of weapon is this? I can feel a powerful force from it." Roger explained the Windseeker and said, "You can refer to its appearance, and the energy charging aspect can refer to the Hand of Ragnaros. Leave it to me." Magni couldn't wait to take the Windseeker and began to study it. The Thorium Brotherhood glanced this way and then returned their gaze to the Firestone hammer. They didn't think the Windseeker was stronger than the Firestone hammer. On the one hand, it was because they didn't understand the Windseeker. On the other hand, dwarves usually used warhammers, and in their hearts, a divine warhammer was much stronger than other artifacts. When the Firestone hammer was forged, it was made according to Ragnaros's size, and it was not suitable for other creatures to use at all. If the Thorium Brotherhood wanted to create a new Hand of Ragnaros, they needed to melt the Firestone hammer first, analyze the materials inside, and then pour it into a new mold. The Thorium Brotherhood had already had a draft, and even many Brotherhood members had their own molds. Roger reached a deal with them. All the materials could be used to create a new Hand of Ragnaros, but he would need half of the finished product. The Thorium Brotherhood agreed to the agreement. They had a total of 14 molds, and after the creation was completed, they could keep 7. The Dark Iron Dwarves once had the 7 sages, but because they summoned Ragnaros with the previous Emperor Thorasan, they were eventually killed by Ragnaros, and their souls were imprisoned in a hall. The Dark Iron Dwarves named this hall the Hall of the 7 Sages, but the Thorium Brotherhood believed that the 7 sages were not worthy of being called sages. Only people like them, who liberated the fate of the Dark Iron Dwarf slaves, were worthy of being called sages. They had already thought about it. As long as the Hand of Ragnaros was created, they would form the Council of 7 Sages and elect 7 sages to lead the Dark Iron Dwarves to glory. And these 7 Hands of Ragnaros would be the symbol of the 7 sages. With the goal in mind, the Thorium Brotherhood was motivated to work. They quickly used the magma furnace in black rock depths to melt the Firestone hammer, then decomposed the metals inside and re-poured them into 17 molds. Seeing that the Hand of Ragnaros was about to take shape, the Thorium Brotherhood quickly said to Roger, "Quickly put the essence of the Fire Lord in." Roger raised his hand and created 14 flames with divinity, which were integrated into the molds. What is this? The Thorium Brotherhood looked at Roger in astonishment. This is not the essence of the Fire Lord. But the effect is no different from the essence of the Fire Lord. Roger pointed to the already formed mold. Now, let's see our masterpiece. The Thorium Brotherhood felt that they had been deceived, but now that things had come to this, they had no other choice but to see the results first. However, when they opened the mold, a powerful flame swept over. They quickly dodged and stood in the distance, watching the hand of Ragnaros, which was burning with raging flames, in surprise. This seemed to be even more powerful than they had expected. Roger walked over, picked up one of the hands of Ragnaros at random, and weighed it in his hand. It was a bit heavy. It was no problem for him to use, but it would be a bit unwieldy for the Red Dragon squad to use. The Thorium Brotherhood hurriedly gathered around, wanting to pick up the hand of Ragnaros, but they couldn't get close. Roger put away his hand of Ragnaros and said to the Thorium Brotherhood, "You choose 7 people, and I can bestow the blessing of fire upon them, so that they can use the hand of Ragnaros." The Thorium Brotherhood looked at each other and elected the 7 sages through a vote. After Roger bestowed the blessing of fire upon them, the 7 sages picked up the hand of Ragnaros. From then on, the Dark Iron Dwarf 7 sages gradually became famous. Chapter 142. During the process of forging the hand of Ragnaros, the Thorium Brotherhood discovered Roger's power. Therefore, after the Council of 3 Hammers was established, they quickly passed a resolution to become Roger's loyal allies. Their trust in Roger exceeded that of Magni, even though Magni had also helped them overthrow Thorasan's evil rule. However, the hatred between the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Bronzebeard and Wild Hammer Dwarves could not be eliminated in a short period. Just as they hated the Bronzebeard Dwarves, the Bronzebeard Dwarves also hated them. Since the 3 factions took control of Blackrock Depths, the Bronzebeard Dwarves had frequently oppressed the Dark Iron Dwarves, and even had conflicts with the Thorium Brotherhood from time to time. Although these conflicts were resolved by Magni, they served as a wake-up call for the Thorium Brotherhood. If they couldn't secure a powerful backer, they would still face the risk of extermination, just like during the War of the 3 Hammers. Therefore, they chose Roger to be their backer. After the resolution was passed, the Council of 3 Hammers sent a large number of warriors and craftsmen to Roger's army. Soon, their numbers exceeded those of the human soldiers, second only to the Orcish warriors. Roger knew that the Council of 3 Hammers was offering him a pledge of allegiance, so he readily accepted. Magni didn't say anything after learning about this. His purpose in attacking Blackrock Mountain was to rescue his daughter Moira. If it weren't for Roger's help, he wouldn't have been able to enter Shadowforge City, let alone rescue his daughter. He owed Roger a favor, so he helped Roger forge weapons. After the Fire Sword, modeled after Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker in appearance and the hand of Ragnaros in energy output, was forged, he decisively offered his farewells. Shadowforge City was not Ironforge, and he had no intention of staying permanently. Roger looked at the sulfuras, the extinguished hand in his hand, and said to Magni with a smile, "This sword is a symbol of our friendship. From now on, I will try my best to help the dwarves eliminate hatred and prevent civil war among the dwarves." Magni also smiled and said, "I will also restrain the Bronzebeard dwarves." Magni left, but not all the Bronzebeard dwarves withdrew. Magni temporarily appointed his brother Bran as the envoy of Ironforge to stay in Shadowforge City, to maintain communication and be responsible for the Ethereal Tank Improvement Project. The reason for the temporary appointment was that Bran was not one to stay idle. He was passionate about adventure and archaeology, and was a famous monster puller in Azeroth. To keep him idle would be like killing him. Fortunately, Bran was recently very interested in Uldaman, and the Dark Iron Dwarves had established Anguish Fortress near Uldaman to excavate the Uldaman ruins. Although Anguish Fortress was still under the control of Ambassador Flamelash, Roger had already put the attack on Anguish Fortress on the agenda. The Dark Iron Dwarves had been operating in Searing Gorge, Burning Steppes, and the Badlands for a long time. If they hadn't been unexpectedly attacked by the Horde, they might have already been competing with the Bronzebeard Dwarves for control of Loch Modan. After all, the Dark Iron Dwarves were not fire elemental creatures, and they were unwilling to live near the barren Blackrock Mountain. After Roger pacified Molten Core, he immediately set his sights on Blackrock Spire. Without Nefarian, the Blackrock Orcs could hardly resist the Sons of Lothar's attack. The Sons of Lothar had experienced countless wars in Draenor, and among these opponents, the Orcs were relatively weak. If Roger didn't want to sacrifice any of the Sons of Lothar, they would have probably leveled Blackrock Spire long ago. Even so, with accumulated infiltration, the Sons of Lothar quickly captured the lower Blackrock Spire. Rend Blackhand led the remaining orcs into the upper Blackrock Spire to resist stubbornly, but after Nefarian was one-shot by Ragnaros, Rend no longer resisted Roger. A powerful figure who could kill Ragnaros, becoming his master didn't seem unacceptable. Nefarian's defection allowed Roger to easily capture the upper Blackrock Spire. Without the Sons of Lothar even needing to take action, Nefarian's black dragons and Draconid bound all the orcs and brought them before Roger. However, Onyxia was unhappy with this. Nefarian was competing with her for favor. The two black dragons fought each other. To gain Roger's attention, Nefarian summoned his subordinates in the Badlands, consisting of more than a dozen black dragons and hundreds of Draconid troops. With the army growing stronger day by day, Roger also began to turn his attention to the Badlands. As Ragnaros' last stronghold in the material plane, Anguish Fortress was a place that Roger had to take. The Council of Three Hammers sent 2 sages to lead the Dark Iron Dwarf warriors to cooperate in the battle. General Drakisath led the Draconid army as the vanguard, and the Sons of Lothar commanded the Orcish army as reinforcements. Before the war, the 2 sages sent spies to infiltrate the fortress. When the army attacked, the inside accomplices immediately opened the fortress gate. Then, most of the Dark Iron Dwarves turned against them, and the fire elementals led by Ambassador Flamelash were easily defeated with internal and external cooperation. After taking Anguish Fortress, there were no longer any hostile forces near Blackrock Mountain. Roger began to turn his attention to internal affairs, mainly in 3 aspects. First, the corrupting aura on the Dark Iron Dwarves, Black Dragons, and Draconid. Whether it was the dark aura of the old gods or the corruption of Ragnaros, they were all affecting them. If these were not removed, they would still be at risk of corruption. Second, the transformation of the Blackrock Mountain area. Molten Core would be retained as an energy base, and Shadow Forge City would be retained as a factory for the time being. Blackrock Spire needed to be demolished and rebuilt into a city. In addition, a forestation was also needed. Many life mages among the Sons of Lothar had already begun a forestation at the Scorched Outpost and had achieved some success. The next step would be to carry out a forestation in areas far from the lava, such as Blackrock territory, and after the Black Dragons repaired the land, a full coverage transformation would be carried out. Third, the excavation of Uldaman. After the war, Bran led the dwarves who liked to excavate the Uldaman ruins. Roger knew that Uldaman's return to the world was imminent, and he had to prepare for battle with the Titan Guardians inside. After seeing Agrimar's arcane magic, Roger had high expectations for the Titan creations. It would be even better if he could find some Titan aura on them. This was also the main reason why Roger supported Bran's excavation work. Chapter 143. As a former guardian dragon, even in his fallen state, the Black Dragon could still wield the power of the earth. Neltharion used the power of the earth to tear the land apart, causing the cataclysm. Therefore, whether it's Onyxia, Nefarian, or other Black Dragons, they can still use the power of the earth. Letting them repair the earth is putting their abilities to good use. After the corruption on the Black Dragons is cleansed, they could actually return to being Earth Warders. However, their minds, twisted by Neltharion, have no desire for their original mission. After all, what's more interesting than ruling the world compared to protecting the Earth? But under Roger's might, the Black Dragons can only obediently repair the Earth. In order to heal the Earth faster, Roger established an organization called the Earthen Ring. That's right, he's plagiarizing Thrall. Don't mind the details. The Earthen Ring is led by Roger, with Onyxia and Nefarian as the Black Dragon leaders, responsible for burying the magma. The Lothar's Sword Organization's mages are responsible for cooling and afforestation. There are also some Dark Iron Dwarves who have joined, rediscovering the ancient shamanistic profession, which also makes the name Earthen Ring live up to its name. The Dark Iron Dwarves being able to rediscover the shamanistic profession also starts with Roger. When he was in Draenor, he learned all the ways to communicate with the elemental spirits. Furthermore, his contact with the Drania and the Broken allowed him to understand the methods of summoning the spirits of the ancestors. Communicating with the elemental spirits is a necessary means for all those who cast elemental spells, but the methods of communication vary among the various spell-casting professions. Among them, druids are the most gentle. They are close to nature. The elemental spirits and the spirits of the wild favor them, so as long as they have any requests, the elemental spirits will spare no effort to help them. During the War of the Ancients, Malfurion had only been studying natural magic for a short time, but he was far more powerful than ordinary people, precisely because the elemental spirits were willing to serve him. Next are shamans. Shamans worship the elemental spirits, so the elemental spirits allow the shamans to use their power. But it is also this kind of worship that allows the elemental spirits to easily abandon the shaman. Even someone as powerful as Thrall was abandoned by the elemental spirits simply because he killed Garrosh. Everyone thought that the reason for the abandonment was that Thrall used magic during the duel, but in fact, the elemental spirits recognized Garrosh more. After all, Garrosh wanted to lead the orcs of that timeline to become stronger, and the elemental spirits recognized Garrosh. After all, the stronger the orcs become, the stronger the faith they receive, and the stronger the power of the elemental spirits will be. On the contrary, Thrall joined forces with the aliens to deal with the Iron Horde, killing most of the elemental spirits' believers. More importantly, Thrall is still an orc, so the elemental spirits will naturally punish this traitor. The most forceful are the mages, who use arcane power to forcibly control the elemental spirits, forcing them to serve them. They can even use arcane energy to simulate the power of the elements. This makes the elemental spirits very dissatisfied, but it also allows them to unleash their own destructiveness, making the elemental spirits both love and hate it, experiencing pain and pleasure. Roger also used the way of mages at the beginning, but after becoming a demigod, he leaned towards druidism. However, he doesn't trust the use of elemental spirits' energy, so he turned to borrowing the power of the Thunder Fury and Sulfuras, so that he can use the elemental spirits in the way of a druid and prevent the risk of the elemental spirits betraying him. This is also why it is important for Roger to conquer Molten Core. Roger put the Red Dragon Squad in charge of the operation of the Earthen Ring. Under the guidance of Roger and Alyria, each member of the Red Dragon Squad can stand alone. Roger poured his heart and soul into the Red Dragon Squad, pouring all his feelings for Jon into the Red Dragon Squad. Under the management of the Red Dragon Squad, the work of the Earthen Ring went very smoothly. Nefarian and Onyxia formed an effective competition, and the speed became much faster. Although this pair of siblings both submitted to Roger, they still hated each other, and neither was convinced by the other. Nefarian has a large force, leading more than a dozen powerful black dragons, specializing in large magma pools, and the speed is countless times faster than Onyxia. Onyxia certainly didn't want to admit defeat, so she desperately hatched whelps. These whelps were weak when they were first born and could not use the power of the earth. However, Onyxia didn't want to admit defeat, so she asked the Red Dragon Squad to cast the breath of life on the whelps to accelerate their growth. However, after accelerating their growth, the intelligence of the black dragons did not increase. The Red Dragon Squad asked Onyxia to find Roger, because only Roger could solve this problem. Onyxia's eyes lit up, and she quickly found Roger. "Master, please help these whelps grow up." Roger said, "If you use the power of time to accelerate the growth of the whelps, it may cause some damage to the whelps." Onyxia said very simply, "No problem, this is the price that our black dragons must pay." Roger shook his head helplessly. "What price must the black dragons pay?" "It's just that these dragon eggs hatched were all obtained from Nefarian, and they were all produced by the black dragons under Nefarian, so Onyxia doesn't cherish them. What she cherishes are the dragon eggs in her own lair, which are produced by herself, and the ones hatched are all her offspring." However, Onyxia is right. He can't let there be too many black dragons, because they are easily bewitched by Deathwing. It's better to accelerate the growth of these whelps and then turn them into mounts and equip Lothar's sword. So, he used the power of time to wash over these whelps. Under the acceleration of the power of time, the size of the whelps increased, and their intelligence also increased a bit. After the power of time was finished, Roger immediately took out the magic reins and bound these whelps. "What are you doing?" Onyxia didn't expect Roger to turn these whelps into mounts. "You must know that after becoming mounts, these whelps will not grow anymore." Roger said, "They will become the mounts of Lothar's sword, but they can already repair the earth. As long as there are enough, you can completely catch up with Nefarian's progress." Onyxia nodded, "Then I'll continue to hatch eggs." Chapter 144. Bran, leading the dwarves, finally found the entrance to Uldaman. Galgan Firehammer, the new governor of Anguish Fortress, immediately sent a letter to Blackrock Mountain. The Thorium Brotherhood found Roger and told him the news. Roger immediately handed over the affairs of Blackrock Mountain to the Red Dragon Squad and followed the Thorium Brotherhood to Uldaman. This time, they brought an Apex's tank to test its effectiveness in actual combat. However, by the time they arrived, Bran had already led his people into Uldaman. Truly a master of pulling aggro. Roger glanced at Galgan Firehammer. Let's follow him. We can't let Bran die here. I advised him against it. Galgan Firehammer muttered. Roger knew, of course, that Galgan had advised him, but Bran was clearly not one to listen. Of course, Roger wasn't worried about Bran's safety, although the guy was a troublemaker, he had great luck. What he was really worried about were the dwarves who had gone with Bran. They didn't have Bran's good fortune. Every time Bran opened a dungeon, many people would be killed, but miraculously, Bran's exploration team grew larger and larger. Sure enough, after entering Uldaman, they saw several dwarven corpses. Around the corpses, there were a large number of trogs wandering around, obviously studying how to eat these tough-skinned dwarves. Roger raised his hand and used arcane explosion to kill the trogs. I'll go in and find Bran first, you guys get the tank in here. Galgan Firehammer quickly led people to clear the path, driving the tank into the excavation pit and into Uldaman. As soon as the Thorium Brotherhood drove the tank around a corner, a group of trogs rushed over. Let's go. Galgan Firehammer drew his firelock and was about to fire. But the Thorium Brotherhood stopped them. Let the tank try it first. Galgan's proposal made the Thorium Brotherhood's eyes light up. It seems like this could be done. Roger had no idea that, without his prompting, the Dark Iron Dwarves had also figured out the true meaning of modern warfare. The only pity was that this was a magical world, and many concepts of modern warfare were not suitable for this world. Otherwise, Roger would have assembled a powerful modern army long ago. However, using modern warfare theory, Roger did master many powerful weapons. The tank rumbled forward, and the machine guns easily killed the trogs who dared to approach. However, the machine guns were not omnipotent, and they soon encountered Earthen, the ancestors of the dwarves. But these Earthen were clearly unwilling for the dwarves to enter Uldaman, and like the trogs, they desperately tried to stop the dwarves from advancing. The dwarves had no choice but to use the machine guns to attack. However, the machine guns' damage to the Earthen was not ideal. The Earthen's bodies were made of rock, and the machine guns' attacks were energy-based. When the energy hit the rock, most of it would dissipate, and the rest posed little threat to the Earthen. Let's use cannons instead. After the Thorium Brotherhood switched to cannons, they directly blasted the Earthen into pieces. Soon, the tank caught up with Roger. However, the tank consumed a lot of energy. 80% of the Arcanite crystal was consumed, and the remaining energy was mostly needed to provide power, otherwise the tank would stall. How are the results of the combat test? Roger asked. Very strong. The Thorium Brotherhood handed a report to Roger. Although it's not complete, it basically reflects the tank's actual combat situation. Roger looked at it and nodded with satisfaction. It has met expectations. It would be great if the cannons could be used for siege warfare. The Thorium Brotherhood said with some regret. Don't be greedy. Roger said, the original design of the cannons was to kill flesh and blood, and we can use them to deal with many enemies. After we go back, we can start mass production, and I think we will use them soon. No problem. Galgan leaned over. Lord Rogers, have you found Bran? Roger shook his head, but I can already feel his aura. He's up ahead, but I still have something to do. What is it? Roger took out a staff and inserted it into a hole in the model in front of him. The stone door directly opposite the model opened with a bang, and a tall woman walked out slowly. Who is it? How dare you disturb me? The giant woman looked down at Roger and the others. Who are you? Where are the Earthen? Roger said, I am invited by the dwarves to find the relics of the Titans. These dwarves were purified from the Earthen, and they want to follow in the footsteps of their ancestors. What? The flesh curse took effect. The woman was annoyed. Even so, the relics of the Titans are not something you mortals can touch. She pointed at the tank. I can feel that this weapon has killed a large number of Earthen. You must pay for their lives. As she said that, she pointed at the tank, and a powerful arcane blast shattered the tank directly. The Thorium Brotherhood hurriedly dodged, but were still badly injured by the blast. Only Roger activated his mana shield, directly deflecting the fragments of the tank. He sneered at the woman, this tank is my property, you must compensate me. As he said that, Roger also pointed at the woman, and powerful arcane energy bound the woman. The woman looked at Roger in horror. How is this possible? How is it not possible? Roger sneered, what time is it now? Are you still immersed in the era of the Titan creations? It's time to show you the new world. Roger directly opened the portal to Blackrock Mountain and took the woman to Blackrock Mountain. Where is this? The woman looked at Blackrock Mountain, which was covered in lava, and couldn't believe that this was a world created by the Titans. This was created by Ragnaros. You should know who Ragnaros is, right? Of course, I know, although I have lived in seclusion for a long time, I have not lost my memory, the woman said. That's good. Roger looked at the woman. I was a little worried that you had forgotten the mission the Titans gave you. Chapter 145. Aronaya fell silent for a moment. But we still have very important things to protect. Nothing is more important than the mission, Roger said. The mission is our faith, and faith is more important than our lives. Don't you know what happened? If we can really accomplish that thing, what does it matter if we lose our lives? Aronaya said solemnly, what we are protecting is the true history of Azeroth. If Loken knows that we are walking in the world again, his army will instantly arrive here and kill all those who know. Loken. Aronaya glanced at the soldiers standing further away and said softly, Loken is the most powerful among us. He controls the entire Uldur and holds a powerful Vrykul army in his hands. Do you know about the Vrykul? They are the ancestors of you humans. Each one is about as tall as I am. One Vrykul can kill hundreds of you humans. Roger laughed. It's time to give you a tour of my tank division. Tank division. Aronaya, with a look of doubt, followed Roger into the Blackrock Depths military factory. Inside the military factory, she saw 7 or 8 tanks of various designs. Are you talking about these iron lumps? Roger cast a spell, displaying a simulation of the tanks firing to Aronaya. I know about the Vrykul, but I don't know if they can withstand this kind of firepower. Watching the scene of artillery fire booming on the illusion, Aronaya was incredibly surprised. How could you possibly create such powerful weapons? The cannons are weapons from another world, which I brought back. The base is made by the dwarves. If they are given more time, they might be able to create physical cannons. Whether it is magical attack or physical attack, we will have powerful firepower. That's incredible! Aronaya exclaimed, but soon became depressed. But you have too few tanks. They definitely can't deal with the Vrykul. These tanks are just samples, and the model hasn't been finalized yet. Now that we have determined the model, we will assemble the production line next. Once the assembly is complete, we will produce 100 tanks per month. After we are skilled in production, the speed will increase. By then, we can form an army of tens of thousands of tanks, and we won't be afraid of the Vrykul at all. Aronaya, however, was not happy. Being able to deal with the Vrykul is useless. Loken has a device called the Forge of Wills, which can produce Vrykul without limit. Moreover, he also has the Faceless Ones to help him. He has betrayed the Titans by joining Yog-Saron. Yog-Saron? Don't mention its name lightly. Aronaya warned. The old gods possess powerful sensory abilities. You were the one who brought it up first, Roger rolled his eyes. Aronaya said, we are Titan creations, a special life form. Yog-Saron cannot sense that I have said its name. But you are different. It can easily sense your location and tempt you to fall. Roger shrugged and said, don't worry, I'm not ignorant about the old gods. The old gods once tried to tempt me, but I got rid of them. You. Roger recounted the story of the dragon soul. Aronaya was extremely surprised. No wonder I felt your power was so familiar. It turned out to be the power of the dragon aspects. I am gathering a powerful army to clean up these old gods. If you join forces with us, the chances of winning are greater. But what if we fail? Aronaya asked. We can't fail. Roger said affirmatively. I'm afraid you're a little too confident. Aronaya said speechlessly. Perhaps I have some tricks up my sleeve. Roger looked at Aronaya. You have to know that my power comes from the dragon soul. Dragon soul? Aronaya seemed to have thought of something. Roger said, do you dare to take a gamble with me? Aronaya began to think seriously. How confident are you? Without you joining, Roger said seriously, I have 100% certainty. Aronaya almost twisted her waist. Then why do you want us to join? I am confident in dealing with the old gods. Inviting you is just to speed up the restoration of the earth. Roger pointed to the magma pool under Blackrock Mountain. You have also seen that the land here is riddled with holes. It will take at least several hundred years to repair. But with your joining, at least some time can be saved. Aronaya nodded. We are very good at repairing the earth, especially Azedas. Wait, are those dwarves still going deeper? If they clash with Azedas, I can't guarantee their safety. Actually, I am more worried about Azedas's safety. Aronaya said, he must have gone to Azedas's room. We have to hurry. Once he disturbs Azedas, Azedas will definitely deal with him. Let's go take a look. This time Roger did not object. It was really easy for a Titan Watcher to kill a dwarf. If Bran really fought with Azedas. The group quickly went deeper. With Aronaya leading the way, the Earthen no longer attacked the dwarves. Soon, the group arrived at Azedas's secret room. The door to the secret room was wide open, and bursts of angry roars could be heard from inside. Intruders, you don't even think about stealing the discs of Norganon. Roger looked at Aronaya strangely, you seem to be afraid that others don't know what you are preserving. Aronaya was a little embarrassed. They did have a bit of that intention. The group came to the door and saw the situation inside. Several dwarf corpses were lying on the ground, and Bran was being chased by a huge Titan Watcher. Azedas. Aronaya quickly stopped Azedas. Azedas stopped. Aronaya. It's me. The two Titan Watchers slowly approached and then hugged each other. Oh. Roger and the dwarves were fed a mouthful of dog food. Bran ran over, oh. Rogers, luckily you came, otherwise I might have died here. Who told you to be so rash? Roger looked at Bran speechlessly. Originally, no one needed to die, but as a result of Bran's actions, at least 20 dwarves died. This may be the fun of adventure, but Roger strongly disagreed. Adventure may be able to write legends, but it is never the ultimate beneficiary. Don't say Roger is heartless, but why be cannon fodder when you can be a beneficiary? Chapter 146. Windrunner Spire. Aratta ran to Alaria's side and asked curiously, Mom, what are you looking at? Looking at the sunset. Alaria said softly. But the sunset is in the west. Aratta said strangely. Alaria lowered her head awkwardly, and touched Aratta's head with her hand, weren't you playing with Aunt Varisa? Aunt Varisa's boyfriend is here. Aratta said with a smile, I'm creating opportunities for them. That mage? Alaria was a little disgusted. She didn't know what her sister's taste was, to actually fall for that unlucky guy. The first time she saw Ronan, Alaria compared him to Roga, but no matter how she compared them, Roga was much stronger than Ronan. Varisa is still good. Although she found an unlucky mage, at least she found a partner. What really worries her is Sylvanas. This guy clearly likes that human ranger named Marius, but she just won't admit it. Does she want to wait until Marius dies before expressing her feelings? You know, mortals only live for 100 years. Alaria admitted that she was a bit of a worrywart, but these were the only two relatives she had in this world. Her other relatives in the main timeline all died in the war with the orcs, including her favorite brother. When she first came out of the portal, Alaria thought her family wouldn't accept her. But unlike what she expected, both Sylvanas and Varisa were very kind to her, even knowing that she came from another timeline. The other elves also didn't reject her and her son. Aratta also made many friends. From this point of view, elves value feelings more than humans. Mom, when is Dad coming? I miss him. Aratta said. He should be here soon. Alaria looked to the south. So many days had passed, Roga should have dealt with the problem of molten core. Just as she was thinking, a portal appeared beside the two of them, and Roga walked out of it. Dad! Aratta rushed up in surprise. Alaria smiled, is everything settled? Almost, the rest can be handed over to the Red Dragon Squad. Roga reached out and hugged Aratta, you've grown a lot taller again. That's right, in another 2 years I'll be able to catch up with you. Aratta said proudly. Then good luck. Roga said with a smile. Da-da-da-da. Footsteps came, Varisa ran up quickly, looking at Roga warily. But when she saw that Roga and Aratta had a good relationship, she immediately relaxed, although I really don't want to disturb you, but, this is brother-in-law, right? Hello, my name is Roga Kishane. Varisa, I think you should know me. That's right. Another series of footsteps came, and a red-robed mage walked up. Ronan looked at Roga curiously, with a probing look in his eyes, as if to say, this is the guy who stole Turalion's wife? This is Ronan, my little sister's fiancé. Alleria introduced, and then said, we have already recruited some troops, what should we do next? Verisa and Ronan also looked at Roga. After Alleria told them about Roga's plan, they had been helping Alleria recruit troops. They all knew that Roga was brewing a big plan, but they didn't know what the plan was, so they were all very curious about what the specific plan was. Wait. Are you going to rebuild the Demon Hunter or the Erator first? Alleria asked. Erator said excitedly, of course it's the Erator, that's my big ship. Verisa and Ronan looked at the family of three inexplicably, wondering what they were talking about. Isn't it just a ship? Sunsail Anchorage has plenty of them, you can buy them at any time. Verisa said. Ronan also said, Kul Tiras also has many warships. If you need them, I can negotiate to buy some, which will be faster than building them ourselves. What we need is not an ordinary warship. Roga said, you'll know when it's built. He said to Alleria, we built a lot of tanks in Blackrock Mountain. This time, the ship needs to reserve space for the tanks, so it needs to be improved. Alleria shrugged, anyway, you build it yourself, so it doesn't matter how you want to change it. She pointed to the ocean to the west, the ocean is outside, you can build ships as big as you want. Build big ships, and build small ships too. Roga said, this time we are going to build a multifunctional fleet, not only equipped with magic cannons but also gunpowder cannons. He flashed to the surface of the sea, took out countless pieces of wood from the magic package and threw them on the sea. Under Roga's control, the wood was spliced together to form the keel, bilge. This. Verisa and Ronan looked at each other, they had never seen anyone assemble warships like this before. However, the warship was slowly taking shape in front of their eyes, and even if they didn't dare to believe it, they had to admit that someone could really do it. Moreover, it looked like the speed was very fast. Soon, a warship was basically completed. Let's go down and take a look. Alleria said. Erator exclaimed, going to see my big ship. Verisa and Ronan exchanged glances and followed. Now, they were even more curious about Roga. The strength that Roga had just displayed had exceeded their understanding of mages. When they came down, Roga had already completed the construction of the hull and was enchanting it. What is he doing? Verisa asked puzzledly, enchanting such a large ship, how long will it take? Alleria said, this is a necessary step in building a magic warship. When we were in Draenor, we relied on magic warships to build a mobile stronghold at sea and kill countless demons. Moreover, with Roga's strength, it will only take a few days to enchant such a large ship. A few days? Verisa and Ronan looked at each other again, and both saw the shock in each other's eyes. Okay, bring the army here, I think they need to get familiar with the warship first. The two looked at each other, one summoned a strider and went away, and the other used teleportation to leave. Azeroth's most powerful naval force is about to appear. Chapter 147. In the 20th year after the Dark Portal opened, Prince Arthas Manethil of Lord Aeron stepped onto the stage of history. He led a squad of soldiers and Jaina to Strombrad to investigate a monster attack, a trial given to him by his mentor Uther. He was a little nervous at first, but with Jaina by his side, he felt his courage increase. However, the climate still affected the development of the Alliance army. They could only gather the refugees of Alterac, and only those scattered in the Alterac mountains. Because after the disintegration of the Alterac kingdom, most of the land was divided by the Alliance countries. Lord Aeron occupied the most fertile land of Brill, Terran Mill, and South Shore, while Gilneas and Stromgard also occupied some farms. The entire Alterac kingdom was left with only the free land in the Alterac mountains. The remaining Alterac nobles hated the Alliance and did not allow the Alliance to set foot on this land. Because of this, the Alliance sent Turalyon to lead the army here, with the intention of using a borrowed knife to kill. As expected, when Turalyon entered the Alterac mountains, the nobles obstructed him one after another, but they were all dealt with by Turalyon. The Alliance's plan succeeded, but the Alliance army led by Turalyon was trapped in a quagmire and has not recovered to this day. If Roger had not sent multiple supplies one after another, I am afraid that Turalyon would still be hunting in the snow. For this matter, Turalyon went to Lord Aeron several times to negotiate with Terranaz. However, Terranaz said that the Alliance was bearing too much of the cost of the orc internment camps and could not provide support. This disappointed Turalyon. He knew that he could not get any benefits from this mature politician. The only thing that made him gratified was that Terenaz was old, and his successor was an upright paladin. As long as Arthas ascends the throne, the Alliance army will usher in an opportunity to integrate into the Alliance. Therefore, every time he went to Lord Aeron, Turalyon would visit Uther and teach Arthas some things, wanting to influence the future king from an ideological perspective and make him feel good about the Alliance army. Compared to Uther's seriousness, Turalyon gave people the feeling of being gentle and kind. Arthas had a very good impression of Turalyon and was very willing to listen to his teachings. If Turalyon could stay in Lord Aeron for a long time, Arthas would probably want to transfer to Turalyon's command. Therefore, Arthas was very happy to see Turalyon again. "That's great, Turalyon, I'm here for this matter too. Let's investigate this matter together." Jaina looked at Turalyon warily. His appearance was too coincidental. Turalyon shook his head and said, "I have already investigated. Those so-called monsters are actually civilians of Strombrad." "That's impossible." Arthas said in disbelief, "Why would they pretend to be monsters?" "They didn't pretend, but turned into so-called monsters after they died." Turalyon said, "This is a kind of necromantic magic that can resurrect the dead and turn them into undead. These undead, under the control of necromantic magic, will attack all living people they see, so they are regarded as monsters." "Necromantic magic!" Jaina exclaimed, as if she had remembered something. "That's right." Turalyon glanced at Jaina and explained, "We first saw necromancy more than 10 years ago, when the orcs used necromancy to infuse the souls of warlocks into powerful human corpses, creating powerful death knights. When we later attacked Draenor, we had already eliminated all the death knights and warlocks. Necromancy should no longer exist. Although our timelines are different, I think the difference should not be too great." Jaina said, "When the orcs were defeated, Dalaran obtained some books about necromantic magic." Arthas looked at her in surprise. "Could it be that a mage is behind this?" "Very likely." Turalyon said, "We found some moldy grain in the granary, and we detected an evil aura on it. We asked the villagers, and the villagers said that the grain came from Andorhul." "Andorhul?" Arthas and Jaina looked at each other, both feeling the seriousness of the matter. Turalyon said, "That's right. If I didn't have to wait for Kadger, I would have already arrived in Andorhul." Arthas said, "Now that Jaina is here, and she is also a mage, we can go to Andorhul first." Turalyon glanced at Jaina. Although she is a bit young, she should be enough. Immediately, Turalyon left a squad of soldiers to wait for Kadger. He took the others and Arthas and others to Andorhul. As a result, when they arrived in Andorhul, it had already been captured by the undead. The undead army was slaughtering the civilians of Andorhul, which made the soldiers extremely angry. Arthas said eagerly, "We must retake Andorhul." Turalyon also nodded and said, "The undead have not completely occupied Andorhul yet, and many civilians can still be rescued. You protect the mage, we will attack." Turalyon sent a squad of soldiers to protect Jaina, and then followed Arthas and charged towards Andorhul. Turalyon brought hundreds of soldiers, each of whom was battle-hardened. In addition, their surprise attack caught the undead off guard. These undead had only been resurrected recently, and their combat power was not high. It was only because of their ferocious appearance that they were able to capture Andorhul in one fell swoop. Now, facing the Alliance army, they didn't even have a chance to fight back before being returned to death. Arthas took the lead, chasing after a mage-like figure over the gap in the city wall and onto the open space outside the wall. "Arthas!" Turalyon was afraid that Arthas would have an accident, so he quickly chased after him. When he reached the wall, he saw a powerful holy light rising into the sky. Over the city wall, he saw a mage lying in front of Arthas, and Arthas's holy light was purifying the mage's body. "Turalyon, he is the mastermind behind this Kel'Thuzad. Now, everything is over." "Is it all over?" Turalyon was full of doubts. Chapter 148. The whole thing was too easy. Turalyon had never encountered such a simple enemy. What's more, Rogers clearly told him that if anything changed, he could send troops to Stratholm at any time. He remembered Rogers' tone at the time, with the emphasis clearly on Stratholm. What exactly is in Stratholm? Soon, Turalyon knew. After purifying Andorhul, Arthas received a request for help from Hearthglen. A dying cavalryman had just completed his mission and closed his eyes, which also provoked Arthas' sensitive nerves. Turalyon didn't let Arthas embark on the journey alone. As they walked, he said, "Arthas, the situation is already very bad. I think you need to send a letter to Lord Aaron, telling His Majesty the King what has happened here. But, I am a prince, I need to shoulder these responsibilities. Turalion said, that doesn't prevent you from taking responsibility. He patiently guided him, saying, I know a mage, he is the most powerful person I know, even more so than the Guardian. Antonidas. Impossible. Jaina interjected, no mage is more powerful than my teacher. Turalion raised an eyebrow, even if Antonidas stood in front of him, he would admit it. There is no such mage. Jaina said unconvinced. Arthas, however, seemed thoughtful, are you talking about the mage who captured the black dragon? Hearing this, Jaina looked at Turalion with a strange expression, isn't that man Alirias? Turalion looked embarrassed, and he quickly changed the subject, that's not important. What's important is that you know he's powerful. Rogers possesses the power of the guardian dragon, and he can easily kill most of the enemies in this world. But he never relies on his own ability to deal with enemies alone. He will seek alliances and unite all forces that can be united. When we were in Draenor, his strength had already become that of a demigod. Whether it was orcs, ogres, or demons, none were his opponents. But he still insisted on finding allies. The Araco, Drania, Broken, and Treants were all brought into the alliance by him. So, to become a true powerhouse, one should not only have force, but also know how to use wisdom. Arthas nodded, all right. I will send someone to inform my father. The group arrived at Hearthglen and immediately met the commander here, Talan Fordring, the son of Tyrion Fordring. Last year, Tyrion Fordring was exiled for protecting a wandering orc in the wild. The not yet adult Talan could only step up and guard Hearthglen in place of his father. Your Highness, it's wonderful that you can come and help us, Talan said excitedly, his voice trembling a little, our villagers ate some moldy food and turned into monsters. You also have moldy food? Where did so much moldy food come from? Arthas felt like he was going crazy. He thought the whole thing was over after killing Kel'Thuzad. Talan said, the food was transported from King's Road. King's Road? Everyone was stunned. This food came from Stratholme? Then isn't Stratholme also infected by the undead? Just then, a large number of footsteps appeared outside Hearthglen, followed by roars. Countless undead appeared before everyone's eyes, rushing towards Hearthglen. Everyone, get into position. Arthas quickly commanded the battle, and could only put the matter of Stratholme aside. Turalion turned and walked towards the silence. The allied forces had already reached their designated positions without needing command. Arthas came to Turalion's side, I can finally fight alongside you. Turalion said with a smile, then let me see how much you've improved in the past few years. As the two spoke, the undead had already rushed in front of them. The holy light from Turalion's body spread across the earth. When the undead stepped on it, their toes were immediately burned off. They fell to the ground, and their bodies were burned to ashes. Arthas opened his mouth in surprise. He thought he was strong, but compared to Turalion, he was far behind. Terenaz was paving the way for Arthas. After receiving the appointment, Arthas was high-spirited, feeling that he could finally shoulder the responsibility. Departure. Target, Stratholme. At this moment, the soldiers felt Arthas's infinite charm. Especially after they heard that Arthas had even saved a group of children kidnapped by gnolls on the way to Andorhal, like a savior. The army marched rapidly to the outside of Stratholme, when a strange voice rang out. Ha ha ha, Prince Arthas, you've finally arrived. But, you're too late. Everyone in Stratholme has eaten food imbued with necromancy. In a little while, they will all become undead. And you, are already powerless. Who is it? Arthas was stunned. It's a demon. Turalion said, this is a dreadlord. They are best at bewitching people. Could he be lying to us? Arthas asked. No. A portal opened, and Kadger led an army out of it. Dreadlords won't use such simple tricks. I'm afraid the people of Stratholme are truly beyond saving. What do you mean by that? Uther questioned. It's obvious. Kadger said, the demon said that, it must be to achieve some kind of purpose. If I'm not mistaken, it wants us to experience despair, and then fall. Saying that, he looked at Arthas, its target should be His Highness the Prince. Everyone looked at Arthas, and Arthas felt an overwhelming pressure for a moment. But he quickly took a deep breath and raised his warhammer. Since the demon wants me to fall, I want to see what it's capable of. Arthas. Uther looked at the resolute prince in astonishment. Arthas looked at Uther with a solemn expression. If this is my destiny, I am willing to accept it. As long as I can eradicate the undead, what does it matter if I fall? His whole body surged with holy light, and he issued an order, purge Stratholm. Chapter 149. Arthas. Do you know what you are doing? Uther questioned loudly. Of course, I know. Arthas replied with certainty. Uther said in a deep voice, as a paladin, we cannot raise our swords against innocent people. But they will soon become enemies. Arthas responded in a deep voice. Being questioned by Uther one after another stirred Arthas's sensitive nerves again. Uther, although you are my teacher, I am the commander. Uther did not yield. I cannot obey. The Silver Hand cannot obey either. Arthas was enraged. In that case, I. Arthas, in the name of the Prince of Lord Aaron, announce that the Silver Hand is hereby disbanded. Uther did not expect Arthas to issue such an order. He looked at Arthas with disappointment, but seeing that Arthas had no intention of repenting, he felt ashamed and could only turn his horse and leave. The members of the Silver Hand were also dissatisfied with Arthas. In the hearts of many paladins, Arthas was a member of the Silver Hand. Arthas's disbanding of the Silver Hand was a betrayal to them. Many of them had even watched Arthas grow up, treating Arthas as a junior. As a result, this junior Arthas was bullying them, these elders, which made them feel the same way as Uther, ashamed. Sometimes, what people care about is face. If Arthas had requested the Silver Hand to attack, perhaps they would have reluctantly agreed. But unfortunately, Arthas did not save face for them. Watching Uther and the Silver Hand leave the battlefield, Jaina's maternal feelings erupted. Arthas, what you are doing is wrong. Jaina Arthas wanted to say something, but he couldn't say it. Jaina shook her head. I'm sorry, Arthas, I can't watch you fall. With that, Jaina teleported away. Arthas was extremely sad. At this critical moment, the people closest to him left him one after another, giving him a feeling of being abandoned by the whole world. Just then, a large hand patted him on the shoulder. Arthas, cheer up, we still have to fight the demons. Arthas looked up and saw Turalion with a look of love on his face. Turalion, are you willing to purify Stratholm with me? Turalion nodded. Of course, where there is evil, there will be holy light. Now that Stratholm has been occupied by evil, we must purify the evil and save Stratholm. Turalion subtly changed his wording, changing purify Stratholm to purify evil and save Stratholm. When it reached the soldiers' ears, the enemy target changed from the civilians of Stratholm to demons and undead. Moreover, he took over the command without showing any signs. Kadger, send a letter to Rogers and tell him to come quickly. Kurdran, lead the Griffin Knights into the sky, we need intelligence on the entire Stratholm. Kadger and Kurdran took action one after another. Turalion once again commanded the army with his powerful personal charm. Everyone, set up camp in front of the gate to prepare for subsequent rescue. Priests, prepare to detect evil and don't let go of any potential threats lurking among the civilians. We must rescue as many uninfected civilians as possible. Finally, he turned to look at Arthas. Arthas, we need you to stand in front of the gate and use your prestige to appease the people. Prince Arthas, are you just going to watch your people turn into undead without doing anything? I didn't expect you to be a coward. Before he could finish his words, a powerful arcane energy exploded beside him. Boom! A huge figure was thrown into the sky. Everyone looked at the Dread Lord in the sky and the exploding powerful energy, at a loss for a while. Got you! A chuckle sounded from the bottom of people's hearts, and also in Mal'Gannis's heart. Mal'Gannis felt a warning sign and immediately sank, preparing to land to avoid the attack. But a portal appeared under his feet, and a figure stepped out of it. Immediately, a huge arcane hand grabbed the Dread Lord and slammed him into a house. Boom! The house collapsed, and two of Mal'Gannis's ribs were broken. Who are you? Rogers looked at the Dread Lord with a chuckle. Don't think about running away, you can't escape. Mal'Gannis felt the powerful energy in Rogers's body and instantly became vigilant. He wanted to find a chance to fight back, but Rogers just stood there, and he didn't have the slightest confidence in a surprise attack. Run if you can't beat him. Mal'Gannis instantly turned into countless bats and flew into the sky. Rogers raised his hand, and countless arcane missiles soared into the sky with the bats, killing each one in the air. The Dread Lord's figure emerged, weakly falling from the sky. He looked at Rogers in fear. This was their life-saving skill, but it was so easily broken by Rogers. Rogers reached out and summoned the Thunder Fury, blessed blade of the Wind Seeker, and endless thunder power descended from the sky, turning Mal'Ganis into coke. At the city gate, the soldiers looked at the thick lightning and were silent. Rogers is here. Turalyon said easily. Is that Rogers? Arthas was also stunned. That's right. Kadger nodded, perhaps the people of Stratholme can be saved. Arthas looked at Kadger in astonishment, are you saying? Kadger said, Rogers is proficient in many spells, and may be able to save the people of Stratholme. Arthas's eyes lit up, really? That requires him to give us the answer himself. A portal opened, and Alyria led Ronan and others to appear outside the city. They led an army, each holding some jars in their hands. These are all antidote potions. Give them to everyone to drink. They can detoxify the spirit technique's poison. Quick! Distribute them to everyone. Arthas came to his senses and quickly hugged a jar and rushed into Stratholme. Originally, he had already entered Stratholme with weapons, but now fate has changed. Chapter 150. Despite Roger's antidote, not all of Stratholme's people were saved. Nobles, including Baron Rivendare, and half of Stratholme's population had already turned into undead before Arthas arrived, forcing Arthas to personally end the life of this respected elder. The moment Rivendare fell, Roger almost couldn't resist reaching out to touch the corpse. Ahem! Baron Rivendare's soul appeared before Arthas. Prince Arthas, you're too late. Arthas hadn't noticed anything amiss. Baron, what exactly happened in Stratholme? Why have so many people turned into undead? Ah, Baron Rivendare said with a smile, these are all gifts dedicated to the Lich King. What are you talking about? Arthas sensed something was wrong. Arthas was clearly enraged, he was still just a young man. Turalyon walked over, I never imagined Rivendare would be mixed up with Kel'Thuzad. It seems they deliberately spread the plague in Stratholme. Arthas gripped his warmer. Turalyon, I've decided to go to Northrend and completely eliminate the undead threat. Turalyon advised, Arthas, we need to consider this carefully. Deploying troops to Northrend requires more than just planning the march, there's also logistics to consider. Our logistics are already prepared. Ronan walked over and said, we've prepared a fleet with ample supplies, ready to depart at any time. Turalyon looked at Ronan in astonishment. Roger hadn't told him there was such a step in the plan. Roger teleported over, the plan has changed. We have new allies, and their enemy is in Northrend. Turalyon wanted to ask more, but Arthas had already made his decision, we'll set off now. Eliminating the undead is of utmost urgency. Then let's get on the ship first, we can talk about the rest on the way. Roger pointed to the north of Stratholme, my fleet is docked in the bay there. The group arrived at the northern wall of Stratholme and were astonished to find a fleet of hundreds of warships. Arthas was amazed, even Kul Tiras doesn't have such a massive fleet, does it? Roger enjoyed their surprise. Although he wouldn't be complacent, he still enjoyed their newfound respect. He had worked hard for years to build these fleets, and each ship was equipped with Apex's cannons, using up almost all the cannons produced by the Blackrock Mountain Armory. Fortunately, the production of these cannons didn't affect the quota for tank cannons, otherwise, it might have impacted the formation of the tank divisions. The fleet gradually approached, and a pair of tall men and women stood on the deck of the flagship, none other than Azedos and Ionea. After witnessing Roger's military reserves, they resolved to punish Loken and declare his betrayal to the other Titan Watchers. Landing craft transported squads of soldiers onto the warships, mainly concentrated on 10 capital ships. These capital ships were of the same class as the Demon's Bane and could accommodate hundreds of people. The frigates were much smaller, accommodating only 50 people besides the necessary sailors. Fortunately, Arthas didn't bring all his soldiers. Having just retaken Stratholme, he needed to send some people to defend it and prevent Stratholme from falling into the hands of the undead again. At the same time, he needed to report his journey to Lord Aaron and explain why he disbanded the Silver Hand. Without a major enemy in front of him, Arthas was much more rational. On one hand, he wrote a letter to Terenaz telling him his thoughts, and on the other hand, he wrote a letter of apology to Uther. In any case, Uther was his teacher and one of the people closest to him. As for Jaina, Arthas didn't contact her. The young couple had a falling out, and they were always too proud to apologize to each other. The fleet set sail, and the Northrend expedition began. On the flagship, Arthas and the high-ranking officers of the Allied forces sat around a table. In this conference room, special seats were set up for Azeroth and Ionia, allowing them to stick their heads out directly from the ship's hold to participate in the meeting. Roger introduced the grudges between the Titan Watchers and then explained Arthas's plan to eliminate the undead. Then he summarized, "We are all unfamiliar with Northrend. Therefore, we need to unite closely to defeat enemies stronger than us. I suggest that we temporarily unite into an army, first attack the undead, and then deal with the Titan Watcher and the old god behind him." Everyone nodded. Before knowing how powerful the enemy was, they certainly wouldn't think about uniting, they would just go in with normal attacks. However, Roger had already shown them the power of the enemy, and no one was confident in defeating the enemy alone, so uniting was the inevitable result. After some discussion, the Lord Aaron army led by Arthas, the Sons of Lothar led by Turalion, and the Dawn Brigade led by Roger were formally integrated into the Argent Crusade Expeditionary Force. Roger was the marshal of the Expeditionary Force, with Arthas and Turalion as generals, serving as Roger's deputies. Alyria, Kurdran, Kajer, and others were generals, obeying the orders of the three. Once the agreement was reached, all military flags were changed to the Expeditionary Force's flag. While retaining their original badges and totems, the armies added the Expeditionary Force's badges and totems. Furthermore, unified communication equipment for the Expeditionary Force was issued, the command system was unified, and deployments and personnel were adjusted. During the voyage to Northrend, all troops would undergo training to cultivate coordination. After a month of sailing, the fleet finally reached the coast of Northrend. Searching along the coast for a beach, the Allied forces disembarked via landing craft and established a simple camp. Turalion led troops to explore the surroundings, while Roger searched for suitable terrain to build a port. Kurdran led the Griffin riders to explore the interior of the continent, searching for traces of the undead. Alyria led the fleet along the coastline, searching for more suitable landing sites to prepare for the next step of the advance. Arthas benefited greatly from following Roger. He had never seen anyone who could command and manage an army so smoothly, as coordinated as his own limbs.